Okay, I'd like to call the Joint Special School Building Committee to order. It's Monday, November 19th, 2018. We're in the Nashua High School North Lecture Hall. Would the clerk please call a roll?
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Wilshire. Alderman Meluzzi Goya. Alderman Jett.
Jetty, here.
Jetty, I'm sorry. Alderman Clee. Alderman Clee. Mrs. Oden.
Here.
Mr. Garino is here. Ms. Raymond.
Here.
Mr. Mosher.
I'm here.
Ms. Porter.
Here.
Mr. Mosher is joining us by telephone as he recuperates. Are you by yourself, Mr. Mosher?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir.
Let the record show that Alderman Meluzzi Goya just joined us.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the clerk will lead us in the prayer. And Mrs. Porter, would you do the Pledge of Allegiance? But before we do the prayer, I'd like to have a moment of silence for someone who is going to be deeply involved in this project and building construction in general and schools and education. Mr. Brian McCarthy, who is the president of the Board of Aldermen and the chairman of the construction committee. And if we would just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Would the clerk please read the prayer?
Please stand. Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the educational affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with the spirit of unity and understanding which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all of our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Take a roll call. Okay, previous meeting minutes approval, the meeting of Thursday, September 27th, 2018. If there are no objections, I'd like to waive the reading and approve the minutes and place them on file. Is there any discussion? No? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay? All right. Remarks by chairman. Thank you all for being here. This is sort of the semi-official kickoff of the middle school project. It's a big endeavor. We're certainly going to miss Brian's participation in that. I will try to do the best I can to make sure that this comes to a successful conclusion. Remarks by school administration. Sean?
Yes, just so in your packet, I want to make sure you're aware of it. This is the packet you did receive in hard copy. So the RFPs, or the request for proposals for the construction manager, are in there in addition to the architect RFP. And there's a couple of spreadsheets in here, one for the construction managers. That lists the raw numbers in terms of pre-construction costs, basic construction costs, percentages, etc. And then for the architects, which those interviews are next week, they're just whether or not they met the criteria. Either they provided or they didn't. I do have hard copies of the architect's responses for all the construction projects committee. If that causes a problem for anybody and they want a hard copy, we can probably arrange to get that at some point. But let me know individually if you'd like us to do that. That's all I have.
Okay. Also, by the way, the three people that don't look like aldermen or Board of Ed members are from DEW Construction Corp. And as soon as we're done with the first part of the administration of the meeting, we'll go right in and get started early. Construction Projects Committee report, there is no minutes from that. Items for discussion and approval, invoices, A&M Roofing Services. Do I hear a motion?
I'm sorry.
I move,
Yes.
I
Reno.
move to approve A&M Roofing Services invoice number 6 for $3,965.
John? Yeah, I think that's changed.
Yes, yeah, I apologize. So the one that Mr. Guarino just talked about is actually a change order request. And I took it upon myself to tell the contractor to proceed with the work already. It was right at the end of the summer, and we had to get it done before school started, so I felt somewhat justified. I knew our contingency account was in pretty good shape. So above the media center, which is a relatively new roof, when I say relatively, it's only 20 years old compared to some of the other roof. We did some work around the periphery of it, the flashing and whatnot, to extend the life, because that was the part that was starting to fail on us. So the first part of this is asking you to approve that change order request. And the second part of that is it's already included in the last requisition from A&M.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to approve change order request number 1.
So moved.
This so moved by Alderman Lizzie Golia. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Change order 1 is approved. And Sean, is the invoice now for 28,819?
Correct, at 93 cents.
So we need a motion to approve the invoice to A&M Roofing Services LLC in the amount of $28,819.93.
So moved.
Okay. Mrs. Raymond made the motion to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Meeting dates. Typically, what we do is Sean puts out a list of dates based on our normal meeting, and we try to work around Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And spring break.
And the spring break, yes, thank you. And sometimes we have to move them anyway, but this is just the general approval of the anticipated dates for the construction projects meeting, followed immediately by the joint special. Any discussion on any of the dates? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. Let's see. Okay. Guide for Safer Schools. I put that document out. It was a very comprehensive document relative to what many of the cities and towns that have been affected by issues in their schools have done. It explains from an engineering standpoint what they think is spending too much money, and there's some general guidance in there. One is what we have been involved in lately. We have money from the state to do the vestibules in all the schools. And we'll be continuing to work on that. But if over the course of, particularly between now and the architects, if you would take a look at that, you may have questions of the architects when they're doing their design as we go along relative to school security. So that's just information for you. Okay. All right. Before we proceed, because of the unfortunate circumstance with Ryan, I decided to do this evening strictly as a joint special school building committee meeting. In the past, on particularly large projects, we would start with the construction committee, and then we would have to brief the joint special. I think as we go through the proposals, it makes a lot more sense to do it at the joint school building so that you all have input and can ask questions. When we get into the meat of the project, then we'll shift back and have construction and then followed by joint special. A lot of legwork gets done in the construction committee, getting status from the construction managers and the architects, and then all that information is passed on to the joint special. Does anyone have any concerns relative to that?
I would, Alderman Dowd, I would just comment that I think that's a good plan in terms of continuing the process we've had before, because to your point, a lot of the legwork gets done in joint, or in the construction committee. So
Right.
I think continuing that way makes sense, but I also think it's very good for everyone to hear what we're starting out with.
Right. And I believe the new president of the Board of Aldermen, who is going to, I believe, is going to be on the joint special and construction, may take over the chair. If she doesn't, then I'll be looking for someone to chair that, because I don't want to chair both. That wouldn't be kind of silly, so. But I haven't had an opportunity to talk to her about, she's taking over a lot of things that Brian was involved in, and that's a lot. So we'll see how that flows out. So, okay, I guess we can go. Sean, are we going to do this just in context of the meeting? Going through, okay. So in that case, no, it's almost 7 anyway. DEW, if you would like to introduce yourselves and then present your case. Yeah, you have to push to speak, you have to push the microphone.
I'm scared
If
to
the
talk.
green light is on, you're good to go. Or if you see the cameraman in the back waving like crazy, you're not speaking into it. Loud.
Okay. Oh, good.
So I will get started. This video that you see in front of you will have most of the information that we're going to talk about tonight, although there's a few handouts that we've handed out that we'll go through at the time that's appropriate within our presentation.
Okay.
So, Jim?
If I could just interrupt one other thing for we have a lot of new members that haven't been involved in school projects before. The construction manager is the person that oversees the architect, makes sure that the project is on schedule, on budget, and is sort of our eyes and ears on a day-to-day basis on the project. So just so you know, and we have 3 people who are going to be interviewing tonight, 3 different companies. All of them are qualified, and you know, we'll listen to what they have to say and how they're going to approach the project.
Thank you. So I am Don Wells, president of DEW. DEW happens to be my initials. The rest of the team, Brian Gallagher is our business development person for this region of New Hampshire. He's not with us tonight because his brother was diagnosed with cancer and had surgery today, so he's with his brother. Mike Smith is my right hand. You'll see him during the construction projects. He understands what's going on every project. They don't come any better. He's very, very hands-on and proactive. Jay LeBaire is our MEP, which stands for Mechanical, Electrical, and Fire Protection Specialist. You'll see him during pre-construction a lot, and during construction. He's on vacation, otherwise he would have been here. Jim Gardner, sitting on the end. He is the estimator, and you'll hear a lot from him tonight. Kristen Wells will be the project manager for the project. She's currently doing the Wyndham School And I should have said Jim was the estimator for the Wyndham School, which we're currently in the second phase of. It's about a $34 million project. Dan Riley called this morning. He would be here tonight, but he's very, very sick. If you would like to meet him, we'd be happy to come back down and have whoever you'd like to meet him. It's just an unfortunate situation. But he's also the superintendent on the Wyndham Schools, and you're going to hear, or you're going to see a video and a testimony to our experience at the Wyndham School from some of the people we're working with there. And Ben Spalding is our Director of Safety, making sure that everybody goes home the same way that they came. So, before that, Jim, I'm just going to go through a little bit here. Today's about Nashua schools and the best road to success. There's a bunch of work to be done between now and the next 6 months, trying to make sure that we lead you in the right path and to a road of success. You know, we've got to evaluate renovation versus new and provide you with a lot of information. We're prepared to do that. We're excited about finding the right solutions that meet your expectations. A little bit about DEW and our culture. We work hard. We listen better. We'll be a driving force in what I heard somebody say earlier, controlling the architect and the cost and making sure we stay within the budget. We don't like surprises. You don't like surprises. You're not selecting a CM tonight, or this in the near future, I should say. And you're not interviewing a CM. To me, you're interviewing a partner. And we will be that, and it is a role that we take very, very seriously. So, okay, Jim, you can go to the next slide here. A little bit more about DEW. We were founded in 1997. We purchased a company called McMillan out of Keene 6 years ago. They've serviced New Hampshire for over 70 years, 76 years. And we just opened up another office on Dow Street in Manchester. So we'll have a presence here in the local region. And this is a market that we're very serious about, and we will be here for the long haul. So we're excited about that. Some of the keys to success, you know, it's about building what matters most. And to us and our culture, communication, we firmly believe it's the most critical element to success of every project. Everything starts with that and ends with that. Our people, we have got great people. They are the real deal, and the people that we selected for this project were selected because they have the experience that they need to bring this project through to successful completion for you. Our proven process. You're going to see some of the forms that we use. We're very, very open. Every month you're going to get a financial report, know exactly where you are. During pre-con, we use a value management process. You're going to see that form. And we make sure that if an item is selected within the value management, that the documents reflect it, and we check, yes, it's in the documents, and we'll talk more about that. Accountability. You got to be accountable. And as a partner, you hire us to be accountable. We will be accountable. Safety, I think it goes without saying. For us, it's a way of life. There will be a comprehensive safety plan developed for your project. And it may be in steps, and it may be, we'll look at it in different sections of the project are put together where there's a little more risk for either the workers or the public, but there will be a specific plan that will be adhered to. Everybody will understand it, and everybody work through it. That includes everybody, whether they're people you know, that are from the community that want to walk through the project, or whether it's a renovation and the students are there. Whatever the case may be, there'll be a specific plan to address that. And again, partnerships. Our success is built on that. And our annual volume is around 150 million. This project is something we're very, very capable of. We're very sizable. We use Zurich as our surety, the second largest surety in the world. We work out of their Boston office, and we use Willis as our broker. So that tells you a little bit more about us. Next slide. Actually, before the video, I do want to talk about a couple more things. Our proven process, you heard me talk about it, but we will find through that process the best solutions, the best materials, and the best methods to provide the product that will enhance the student experience and maximize every dollar that you spend. We're good at it, and we've done about $700 million worth of school projects. So we got a big background in education. The VE process, we're going to turn over every stone. We understand the importance of that process and how we have to finalize that scope so the architects and engineers can move forward in a very clear path. We don't want to have that be a process that lingers. You have to wrap it up. You have to get it done and get a clear path forward. We understand that. We'll work closely with you and the design team. I know you haven't picked that yet. We have worked with every single one of the designers you're talking with. We may enjoy working with a couple of them more than the others because they are more construction cost oriented. But at any rate, we'll be there controlling, maintaining costs from early design through VE and through project completion. So, all right, next is the video that we talked about from the Wyndham School people.
As a principal of both the schools, the number one concern of having multiple construction workers on site is the safety of our children. We have worked hours on end to make sure that the safety of our kids is up front, and we make sure we take care of any concerns. And Dan Riley has done a wonderful job making sure that the parents, myself, and the staff are very safe on site. The project involves the renovation of the Wyndham Middle School and the Golden Mark School. We selected DEW as the company of choice because, one, we particularly like the quality and the background of the employees that they offered and provided in their life day. We like the fact that they have experience in working in large-scale projects like this, especially in schools. And we like the way that they effectively communicated large social capabilities and abilities that they could offer to us during the course of this project. I was involved with DEW, particularly Tim Gardner, on budget development. It was critical of the success for the voters on the project. Tim certainly did above and beyond to ensure integrity of the numbers that were being presented to the voters, and truly hope for the success of that process. DEW Superintendent Riley has taken opportunity to teach lessons on the day-to-day construction and how to build from really ground up with students in our all-school meetings, and some teachers have asked them to come in and talk into their classrooms, and once a month Dan comes to a public hearing to talk to the parents, to give them the same information that he has provided to students and to the parents so that they can get an understanding of what's happening now and what's going to happen next. And I think that once we experience, in particular the site superintendents and the supervisors and they were putting on the table for us to work with, and having built schools before as a superintendent, I think that those are the critical people that play an integral role in all of the functions of the construction, particularly developing good projects in the sense of how are they going to interpret the information they being the estimate. Putting that up about our relationship. They like being kept abreast of what's going on a regular basis. They do that. They're very transparent about what's going on. They're very responsive to any concerns we have, anything that isn't going, they're aiming to please.
Yay!
So it's the same team that we're proposing. Kristen, Jim, and Dan is the key three players for your project, so. So, a little bit about what makes us unique. I touched on some of them, but we recognize the importance of educational facilities and how they have to enhance the experience for the student. And also take a lot of pride in the reliability of our estimating services. And, generally when we get to our GMP and we go out to bid, there's a savings of somewhere between 1% and 3%. I think in our whole history of the last 22 years, we've had two that have been more than 3%. But you can rely on the estimates being really accurate. So, you know, it's about finding for you what is the best road forward and providing you the process to get you that best value that I spoke about earlier. Managing the risk, that's what you're hiring us for. You know, we're going to do what you hire us to do, and that is to control and be a force in making sure that this project stays on track and that there's no surprises. Everything we do is partner-oriented. We have a very large bench. We have 145 employees. We on a more in this climate than I like, but there's a lot of subs that don't have the staff right now. So we have to augment subs quite a bit more than we've had to in the past, but we have the staff so we can do that. Of those 145, 150, there's about 80 of them who actually can put work in place and work in the field. And we do self-perform some work when it isn't advantageous to the owner from a savings standpoint, or maybe from a schedule standpoint. We have 7,500 vendors that work for us. We just were successful bidding on the Pembroke Readiness Center, and it was about a $14 million project, and we brought a few subs in from outside the area, and we actually were successful on the pricing by about $1 million. So we're very competitive, and we're very experienced. You'll hear more from the people that bring that experience to bear to make sure that things go the way you need to.
And that leads right into me.
Yay!
So I'm Jim Gardner, Senior Project Estimator. I am also a Certified Professional Estimator, and I am LEED accredited. Unbelievably so, I'm senior technically because I just turned 50.
Yay!
But I started work as a Brattleboro Union High School co-op education student for a number of years. Then I went to Northeastern University and studied structural engineering and geotechnology. Principles, and found myself working for a firm just south of here. I actually lived on Exit 1 for a number of years. I worked for Simpson, Gumpertz, and Hager as a building staff engineer in building sciences, and basically rounded out my thought path of coming back to construction and being on the side of the construction envelope. And soon enough, I found myself as an assistant estimator, assistant project manager, and then I kind of found it the best way to come back into things was to help offer pre-construction services from my background and to hone it in the estimating side of the arena. And to talk about the experience that we have, we've got this slide which collects 4 schools, and they're mainly shown because of the size. They're very emblematic of at least the square footage at Elm currently, and what you could be looking into for a new school if the renovation is not the path to take. I happen to work on the Wyndham School District with Kristen and Dan, as we've talked about, and it's just down the road or across the road. Worked on the Keene Middle School a bit when we were at Macmillan prior to DEW purchasing us. And a while back, my alma mater, Brattleboro Middle and High School, that was a 4-year project, phased construction, new construction additions, new fields, you name it. It was pretty comprehensive and extensive, particularly in the square footage, and roughly a $45 million job at the time. So that's a little bit about what I can bring to the table. I do come prepared and multitasked. As you can see, I'm running the machine at the moment because we've had a few people short as a result of illnesses and brothers in harm's way or bad way. And I think what we can bring to bear is a lot of opportunity to take the collective experience that Don highlighted in the front slide. I can't be reminded enough, I just did it on the side too. Between myself, Kristen, Dan, Jay LeBaire, and Mike Smith, as Don noted previously, we have almost 180 years of collective experience. And I think in the testimony from the Wyndham School District, we put all of that to bear. And you know, we tried to seam ourselves into everything that you guys are all about and your staff and your programming needs, and try to, again, listen, as Don said, to collectively come to responsive response to help lead you into the next part of the arena, next approach.
I think maybe now is a good time to just mention that Wyndham was working with another contractor that couldn't get the numbers to work, so we ended up taking that project over and made it work. And we just took over a nursing home in the eastern, or the western part of the state. It's about a $35 million project that another GCCM, I should say, couldn't make the numbers work, and 6 weeks later, we were under construction, $2 million less than where they were. So the subs really love working for us. We get a lot of pricing that others may not get, and we're creative in the way we approach things. And we've never not made a project work, and we've taken over 6 projects that other CMs that could not make work.
So, thank you.
Ready to switch? Hello, everybody. I am Kristen Wells, and I will be the project manager. I'm really excited to be here tonight because Westford, Mass. Is where I grew up, and this is an opportunity for me to come home, so I would really like that. So Don mentioned a lot of these things already, the keys to project success. And my role is so important in that. I'm just going to kind of go over a few things again. Communication. So we identify regular meetings, technology, community involvement, when you saw a little bit of that in the video. We have these regular meetings, and we can talk about, what people attend and stuff like that, but it's all about keeping you, the owner, the school, even the kids and the community involved in what we're doing. We're doing it together as a partnership. So I think sometimes people have you're too far away from me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we're working together, we will be in constant communication, and it's not just in meetings, using email and whatever, but we do have a lot of technology that we use to share. So I know we have a gentleman on the phone. In all of our job trailers, we have these large TVs that allow people to, not just by a little video screen, but to people to attend by video conference, so we're not missing an opportunity to be with somebody live. We have 3D modeling to help coordinate our phasing of our projects. We utilize 3D scan for existing spaces. So for instance, your school that you have right now, when we're doing an evaluation of whether we're going to do a renovation of that school, we can do 3D modeling of each room and evaluate it and make sure that we have all the information we need to make a good decision. We use drones. You saw a little bit of the picture there where you can work with your site consultants and try to figure out whether the topography is going to work for sites and things like that. We're also utilizing with our site superintendents iPads, where they have up-to-the-minute information. So the drawings and everything are real-time. And some of the architects you mentioned, the way that we communicate with each other now, and it wasn't, 30 years ago, but it's instantaneous now. So if there's a decision that we make and it comes right into the superintendent's iPad and they've got it right there, and one of the reasons for that is our technology. Don has been always committed to staying at the top of our game. And one of the ways that we do that is by utilizing technology. And CMIC, which I'll talk about in a second, handles all of our documentation and our cost. But the documentation piece becomes seamless, and we can use it with our architects and you guys. So we are open book. And that is so important that people can get to the information they want when they want it. And it's not waiting for me to hand out a piece of paper. It's you have it all at your fingertips. That's the most exciting thing that we've got going on right now. And I'm just going to jump below with the budget management.
Let me just mention the training to use to be able to get around in CMIC for whoever's going to be doing it from your side. It's a couple hours.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to get through there.
It's intuitive.
Everything will be in there.
So in CMIC, it's real-time cost, and there's not many contractors. Dawn, is there anybody that you know who's using CMIC right now?
Yeah, there's others that are using it.
Okay, but it's just very important for you to know that in our old lives, we'd have to wait for the accounting to post, and if they didn't post on Thursday, and then you'd have to wait a little while. You guys will know exactly at any moment how much we've spent on something. The organization of our cost accounting codes are simple. You know, it's not rocket science, and it's just very important to us, the transparency when you hire a CM. So the other part that we are very, very good at is project planning. So one of the things that's my specialty is scheduling. I've been scheduling since college. I am a little bit older than Jim, but I don't have the senior in front of my name on purpose because, you know. So the scheduling and logistics planning, the scheduling that we would do, very detailed, but it's also done with a team. It's not just me or Jim or the superintendent where we sit by ourselves. It's done with the site, all the subcontractors. Their resources get loaded in so we can make sure that the durations make sense. It isn't just in a vacuum, and we do this with the team, and we do it with the architect as well. So the baseline schedule that we develop and we manage, we update it weekly all the way through the project. We know where we are. We know where we are with money. We know where we are with schedule, and we maintain that throughout the project. So keep the risk low. So the superintendent, if he was here, he would talk about the site-specific safety and security plan. And what Dan would tell you is he looks at your school, the situation, the flow of the traffic, and he develops what makes sense for the school to keep everybody safe and communicates that on a daily basis. Dan, your superintendent, is talking to the principal or whomever is his contact on a daily basis. Every morning, you know where we are, what we're doing, how many people are on the job. We keep track of all of this to make sure we're utilizing right now in Windham, New Hampshire, a badging process where every single person is going through a screening process, fingerprinting, we're all doing it, and we end up having a badge that we wear. So as we walk around, everybody knows that this person has gone through that vetting and has received a badge that DEW has issued. So there's no subcontractors walking around that people don't know. And everybody's attuned to that. So when they say, oh, that person has a badge, it's okay. So if there's a stranger walking around, there's radios to communicate. The superintendent will come and take care of that person right away. Now, obviously, we might, we'll have a fenced-in location and stuff like that, but, there's just, Dan is always looking for ways to make people safe and secure. So.
One more thing about Dan, since he's not here.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan's responsible for on-site communication. He's the first one that unlocks the gate every morning. He lives very close to here. He's the last one to lock the gate at night. He will be in constant communication, and his other responsibilities are schedule, quality of the work, and safety. Those are his primary responsibilities on the job site, and he's really good at it. I would love you to meet him, and sorry he's not here tonight, but he would have a lot more to say if he was. But he's good at what he does, and you can check him out through Windham, or he can come and meet with you at your convenience. Did you want to go through these?
I wanted to go through, and it was in the back. That's the last piece on the cost. So the rest of these, they're not in my exact order that I wanted. But this contract summary, you guys can see, which is in your, oops, I'm talking into my microphone, which is in the packet. When we're putting together a traditional bill, the AIA form that all the architects use and we submit, this contract summary comes with your bill. It's organized in a way that we all agree makes sense. So everybody has a different maybe bucket of money where things are coming from, or they want to keep track of something in particular. We have the technology to provide this real time, and we just wanted to give you an example of what a summary report would look like, how easy it is to read. We do have the ability to even make it special in case you guys had something you wanted to pay attention to. But with the budget, committed cost, what we've billed so far, what I see as a project manager, we're forecasting how much we're going to spend on that line item and what the variance is. So every month, you also have a piece of paper that says, here's where we are, this is what we're doing. But anytime we're working and we see that there's some change or change in the forecast, it's discussed on a weekly basis. You also don't wait until the end of the month for something to be presented. It's a continual basis. So thank you, Don, for saying
But
that.
it's mandatory for every project for us to provide this to the owner. So, I mean, no surprises. Everybody wants to know where you are. So CMIC, that's part of CMIC. So.
Yep. So go ahead,
Okay.
Jim.
Yeah, so that said, back to the handouts, there's two handouts I'd like everybody to maybe just put out in front of them. The first one's the one that's on the screen, and the second one would be the schedule that's kind of following right behind it. And this is kind of difficult to do. From experience, we do a lot of work, as Rick had said. When you're in construction, we're working as a team to collaborate and define what the scope of work is. We're trying to extract it from the end users. We're trying to stay within a certain envelope. We have a designer who might want to state something from a design view or look, and sometimes that has a cost to it. That also is something that Don alluded to. And they need to be cost conscious for your overall goal to serve what you need to serve here at the school level, but also to do it smartly. So this slide that's up on the viewer now, this is the actual estimating process that would occur once we select which approach the school district wants to follow. These silos, as I would say, and I would encourage you to look at it after this as well, represent each stage of the design estimating review that we have to employ to keep everybody on track. So we have to come together as a collected team, figure out what the initial parameters are. Somebody has to put something on paper, and we have to do an evaluation. And that happens in the first bucket. After that evaluation's done, we either know we're high, low, or just right, and we continue on. And we hit the second bucket, which is schematic design to design development, and then construction documents or the guaranteed maximum price phase. So for those folks that don't know much about the lingo, there are 3 iterative distinct design stages such that we have 3 opportunities to keep everything on track. And what we do in between as waypoints is constructability reviews. We participate in all the meetings with your folks on the program side, designer in the same room, city stakeholders, you name it. We're all trying to collect and aggregate data into some formulation of a picture and a scope of work. Then I have to just count things. And then we put it to a price. And then we collectively, with my peer set, do an executive review inside our office, and then we present to you, and then we look forward to what the next steps are. If a project should go, let's say, over budget in some of the earlier phases, one of the tools we utilize, which is also in the packet, is the value management or value engineering process. And that value management process allows us to kind of reset and allow everybody to collectively think what can we do differently to bring something down. Somebody might change their mind. You might have a change in principle like we had at Wyndham. Certain things can happen over a long project. And so we want to be able to be nimble enough to deal with that. So even though we've got very little time to present further, the next slide is sort of where we get into the meat of this. And I'm going to try, there we go. So,
But I wanted to talk about the value management log for just a second.
Sure.
So I said we'd turn over every stone, so what is the item? You list anything that might be considered for cost savings. What's the approximate cost? Is it something the owner wants to pursue? If so, we'll get the final cost. And then it's either pending, rejected, or it's been approved to be part of the design. And then is it in the documents? And yes, it's checked off and it's in the documents. So this is a tool that we use on every CM project that keeps the focus of the project.
Yep.
You can't say, well, geez, I thought we had, no, this is it. So it's really, it's important to make sure that everybody on the team knows exactly what all the decisions they're making, how they affect the project, and this is the tool to do that.
Actually, one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is on that kickoff meeting, that first kind of, let's meet everybody and aggregate all that information. Dan, you said you were CFO or? Yeah. So Dan has a project cost summary. We're working on construction costs. And one of the things that always seems to get blurred is, what's Dan have on his ledger that he's going to furnish? Like maybe you have a sign making machine and you do all your own signage. Or maybe you have a contract with somebody who does roll-out mats for entry vestibules or window blinds. So even right at the beginning, there's an opportunity to say, okay, what's carried on the ledger as an owner cost, and what do we need to ensure that we carry on the construction costs so that when we bring them together, you've got a complete building. And so that has to happen early, and we recognize that.
We want to make sure that you don't have any holes.
Right.
We did have one project where we weren't working with the owner on the owner's side many years ago, probably 18 years ago. We got to construction and they'd forgotten their phone budget, which was almost $250,000. So we had to, at the end of the project, find $250,000. So that's why we want to make sure and do that cross-check up front, to make sure everything that's required for this project is in that budget and nothing's overlooked.
So drawing your attention to the schedule, which again has a lot of information, but Kristen, myself, Dan via remote, and a few others, we put a lot of time into this. The upper section, and when you do get a chance to see it, I encourage you to look at it. We look at this as a two-stager. The mission parameters seem to be this. You've got a wonderfully old historic building in Elm, and it's a renovation potential, but there's a cost to it. And we need to define some form of scope that gets us to a point to say, is that a viable way to either reutilize and repurpose that building, or is it better to redirect those funds into a new school, new site? So in that upper section, we sort of have the team, all of us stakeholders coming together and defining two conceptual sets of designs, one for the renovation aspect of Elm, and the second one would be the concurrent exploration of the new site with a new school, such that at the end of the 6 months, 8 months or so that we were talking about at the front end here, we have an opportunity to provide you both approaches, our findings, and then allow you to go and, jurate what you want to do. And out of that, we would expect, okay, we want to do new school or we want to do renovation. That's where this section comes back into play and follows the model of the previous slide, where we go into the traditional, hey, now we've decided to build new or renovation. The architect and design team, the programming continues, but now we have to focus in on that particular approach that we decided upon. And so as we move down that process, and can I talk, and it's kind of hard, isn't it? So that first year, this is basically 5 years worth of opportunity. You can see that we do a lot of work in the first year, 2019 to 2020. And our goal would be in this approach, and again, this is just our assembling of all the data you've provided us and what we think you might want to try to get out of this in an orderly and timely fashion. What we're trying to do is get to a point where the final GMP can get us into a construction start of April 2020, for which, at this location, folks, you see a green line, which would be the new construction, approximately a 2-year project, and then you see this longer red line, which would be the renovation. So in here, we decide which way we go, and depending on how we choose, we follow the path to where we go. That, in a nutshell, is sort of what we're seeing or believing, we can help foster and confirm and do.
Okay. You want to entertain questions now, or?
Don has some.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have something else?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah, and then we'll go to questions. There's a couple of points I wanted to make maybe before I go to this slide. I did mention pre-construction is the most important part of what you're going to be doing. And I want you to understand that. It's how you decide how you're going to spend your money, whether you're going to do a renovation or not. We're going to be your right hand. We're going to be your partner. You can rest assured that we're going to be looking out for your best interest every step of the way. I think any one of the contractors, as you said, can build this. I think it's about the relationship and the process. You're really forming a new business with a new partner that's going to do $50 million worth of work together. So transparency, accountability, all those things are really important. So, I said safety is a way of life at DEW. We get every project that's been said. We have a 100% success ratio. We make the budgets work where sometimes our competitors don't. Occupied and educational specialists, we've done a ton of occupied schools, we've done a ton of standalone schools. We've done them from, from the grade schools to middle schools to high schools to higher education. You got a time-tested team here that we've presented with the relevant experience. I think our in-house MEP specialist, Jay LeBaire, and our in-house mechanical electrical estimating maybe sets us apart a little bit. It will be a completely open book process, and we have the appropriate staffing and resources within our fees and our general conditions. I'm a little confused about some of the way the fees are going to be analyzed. Maybe that's a topic that will come up during the discussion. I don't know whether it will or won't, but it's kind of open as to how the fees will be assigned to the project, whether general conditions and those kinds of things, whether you go renovation or whether you go new. So maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's, if you want to, you could probably make that a little more clearer and ask for additional proposals. I don't know whether that's something you are wrestling with internally or not, but anyway, next questions.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, but I want to open it up to the other members first. So does anyone on the committee have a question? Alderman Clee.
All right, thank you for taking my questions. Thank you for taking my question. You talked about, Kirsten, that you would be the, kind of like the project manager.
Yeah.
You'd be there. How many other, and I guess I'd have the same question for Dan if you were here, how many other jobs at the same time do you work on, or are you specifically for this one job?
Well, I think,
Specific to the one job.
Okay.
A job of this size, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're not going to be, like, you wouldn't be working Wyndham and this one and another one. So you would be dedicated to this job and so on.
And so would Dan. He'd be full-time on site every day.
Okay. The other question I had on change orders, and pardon me for being new on school construction.
That's fine.
What type of change orders do you usually see in, because this obviously is either renovation or new construction, but for like an old school renovation, what type of change orders do you usually see?
Yeah, on the renovation side, it would be the unexplored, unknown conditions.
yeah, anything that's hidden.
And
You
it
could
Behind the
not
walls
see.
and so
Yeah.
on?
things that you couldn't see or that you didn't have an opportunity to enlist somebody to do a real good job at exploring the as-built and the existing conditions. So if you didn't know that you had some hazardous material in wing A, but you thought you cleared the rest of the building, that might be a change order potentially. If you had a structural deficiency, if you don't really have a good handle on that up front and you found it when you were doing demolition, then you could see a change order out of that type of
But
Addition.
for Wyndham, for example, I could have even brought our change order log. I mean, it's really owner requested change orders. So the estimating that Jim has done, that the team has done for Wyndham, I mean, our log is all owner change orders.
Oh, great. Thank
Well,
you.
I think the other thing that's important maybe to mention here is that once we receive the bids from from subcontractors, we try to get a minimum of 3 bids and as many as the market will bear for each portion of the project. But we sit down with the low bidder and sometimes the 2 low bidders, depending on how close they are, and we review scope. We're going to want the architect there. We might want the mechanical, electrical, or civil engineer, whoever the discipline is, there. But we want an owner's representative there.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that the message intended and the quantity of materials, let's take drywall. We want to make sure they have the right square footage. We review everything because we take off every single piece of the project. And so we'll review that and make sure that they have the scope and they're not going to be coming after change orders. Message intended was received and priced. And when they say that to us and to the owner, that makes them accountable. So we really take that extra step. We were working with Dartmouth Hitchcock Hospital on a $35 million medical office building. And after our review of the mechanical and electrical, Dave Stagger, who is their chief project manager, says, if you're that thorough with every single project that you review the scope with the subs, I don't need to go to these meetings. He didn't go to another meeting. So, but we want owners there just because I want the subs and suppliers to look you in the face as well as us and say, we got it.
That's right.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Lizzie Golian.
Yes, thank you. You, in your printed information as well as in your presentation this evening, you talked about having your own workforce, and you also made reference to the current climate and sometimes subs just not having, and so you can bring your workforce in to keep things moving along. My question is, in the current climate, what is the history with your own workforce? How long have they been with you? Do you have people also leaving you to go other places? So what's your kind of consistency of workforce?
Well, we've been fortunate that we've been busy even through the slow period. We went from 150 down to about 125, and now we're back at the 150 range. So we have not had a lot of people leave, so that's a good thing. The subs, mechanical and electrical and sheetrock and concrete right now are really tough. People are stealing, the unions are attracting people to Boston. It's tough. We had one mechanical contractor on a job have, of his 12-man crew, 6 of them decided they want to go work in Boston. And so what did we do? We had to go out and find other mechanical contractors, come in and augment them because we don't have, that type of skills within our organization. We have carpentry-related skills or concrete-related skills, sheetrock-related skills, those types of things. We can augment crews. But those are the subcontractors who are having a tougher time keeping their help, or the prices have gone up because to keep their help, they've had to pay them more, which is what the market is all about.
Right. So,
So,
may I
follow.
follow? Yeah, so in terms of the people that you employ, what's the longevity? People have been with you for a year, 2 years, 5 years? What's your
We've been in business for
turnover?
22 years, and we have some people that have been at McMillan for over 40 years.
Okay.
I would guess that our average is probably around 16 or 17 years.
Okay.
All of our key management people, our project managers, our supers, all other than 2 supers are over 12 years, so they've been there a long time.
And your workforce that you would bring in to supplement those actual people in there doing the work?
Yeah, that's the same thing. The leaders, or the foremen, have over 16 years probably on average. And we've only hired 25 people in the last 2-3 years, so.
Lindsay, most of, sorry.
Go ahead.
A lot of craftsmen, craftspersons. We have a number of folks that are 4 people, but also carpenters that can do a number of things to supplement, resources on another sub. We don't do it in a vacuum either. It's also not a model that we would necessarily use as your CM. We just want to have that stopgap measure if somebody should have a failing during a critical time for turnover.
Well, that's the other thing. When we interview the subs after bid, you have the staff. What's your current workload? Who's going to be the foreman? We want to meet that foreman. So you want to do that due diligence up front so you don't have those kinds of surprises.
Right, and I guess, the reason for my questioning is I think all of us know what the current job market is like, and we have heard from other people about people leaving here and going other places. And just wanting to know that the carpenters you have working for you have been with you, and they're not people that are just walking in the door.
No, they're
So my concern is really about those people, not your management level staff, but the people that you would be bringing in to supplement or to cover a subcontractor's loss that we're getting like for like in terms of quality of doing the work.
And that would be the case.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes. I listened very carefully. I'm making notes on this presentation, and it's very interesting. I noted the use of technology in the management of their business, and I look at my own history as a superintendent of mechanical department for 3 different railroads, over a 25-year span. And looking at the deficiencies in the construction, meeting current standards for the middle school now, Elm Street, and I'm looking at the prices that may come forth, and I'm thinking that with the consideration of correcting these deficiencies, and also the character of some of the change orders that may be taking place in the construction or reconstruction of the school, it makes me wonder whether or not we do better by putting a few more dollars to it and having that new school built, and then repurposing the Elm Street School for some other municipal project, like with the auditorium for performing arts. So there's just a lot of things that are on my mind, because I recall not too long ago when we were looking at geothermal process for some of the renovations and how impractical it was to really do that, because when I was doing some of the questioning of those people, they were saying, well, we're going to put down so many wells. And I said, well, yeah, have you done the psychometric studies, et cetera, et cetera? And the answer was no. And I had the question, why not? So, I'd like to look at some of the things and have the analysis of the building done so that we could get a fair comparison of what it would cost to renovate, and would it be, putting good money after bad, because the building was built sometime in the 1930s. So I know there's a lot of things that are structurally wrong with the building.
Well, we plan to do that analysis in the very early process and provide you all the information you need to make that decision. If you're asking me what my gut tells me about where you're going to end up, my gut tells me you'll probably end up with a new school, but let's not just assume that until we do the exercise to prove that that's the right road forward.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, but I tend to agree with that. My gut says that we put a lot of good money into an old building, and this is really worthwhile.
Well, you still got that old shell, and envelopes are so important today on buildings. We have envelope specialists within the construction industry and within our company, so it's really important. And you just can't get the envelope of an old building to be the same as a new building. So. Absolutely,
and when you consider that, you look at the energy use and the amount of energy that takes to take care of the new building compared to the old building. That makes a lot of sense, too, when you look at the cost down the line of what you would be saving over the cost in heating and cooling.
Well, part of the analysis would be that energy modeling to tell you what the difference would be to
dollars and cents.
Dollars for the old school to be heated and cooled versus a new.
Yeah, Bill, I think those answers are going to come during phase one of the project.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm anticipating seeing some of it.
Yeah. Heather?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm curious about, and I don't disagree with Mr. Mosier's analysis about Elm Street, but I'm curious about your experience renovating historic buildings like that.
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question. We've done a lot of historic renovations.
Okay, I guess that's my question, because I was looking at the book you showed me, and a lot of them are beautiful. I've actually been to a couple because I came from upstate New York, but I'm wondering how many projects like that have you done where it's a renovation of a historic building in a historic area?
The Brattleboro School was a good example.
Thatcher Brook Primary School.
Yeah, Thatcher Brook Primary. We've done a bunch of those. We could provide you a list if you'd like. It'd be pretty lengthy. But each project is unique and has its own challenges. They aren't all constructed the same, so that to have an understanding of the building and to use that in your analysis of what's the best way to renovate it is extremely important.
Okay, thank you.
Whenever you're in any old structure, historic or not historic.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question about how the decision is made to handle students, and I'm new to this, so I apologize to everybody, but if this is obvious, but how do you handle students in a building while you are renovating? I'm thinking of Wyndham, and I know Wyndham had moved their third grade into the high school. I don't know if that's still there. And is that a decision that's made in conjunction, or is that simply the owner decision? How does that come
No, it's
about?
made together as a group. So we understand what the needs are of the school. We understand how many kids that we need. And so part of the design right up front was to have modular units and try to identify and put kids where it made sense. And you come up with a phasing plan. So part of what we have in our schedule and our pre-construction is, as a group, identifying that phasing plan, working with the architect and the owner.
But it's also daily communication.
Okay.
And if something changes, you know, there was bad weather, we didn't quite get where we were supposed to get to, okay, things changed by a day or two. It's a daily correspondence to all of the staff, and we would have a web page where the people within Nashua could go up and see what's happening. So it can be
cool.
very, very extensive.
All right, thank you so much.
Can I add to Heather's?
Sure.
So part of my resume, which isn't on this paper, is some of my background as a building engineering kind of staff engineer with Simpson, Comforts, and Hager. But I was also an estimator on the Renwick Museum alterations in Washington, D.C., just across from the White House. Did the main Augusta Capitol building, and I've done a lot of Portsmouth Naval Shipyard facilities. They're historic in their own way and kind of neat and challenging, but oddly enough, for a naval base, there was some historic ramifications to that as well. So I know from my background there's definitely a complement that should address the Elm Street portion of it, and I lived Brattleboro for 4 years in the 51 edition.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep,
All set.
welcome.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi. Can you explain to me how an ongoing evaluation of quality of construction would work? So like on an ongoing basis, how do you make sure that the quality of everything is excellent? So, because a lot of times, you know, when somebody's building, some things are hidden and you don't know what's behind there. And what would you do if there were a problem with the quality of something going on with one of your subcontractors?
So first of all, in our schedule, we have quality checks all along the way. So there's an opportunity for architects, engineers, we bring everybody in when we say, ready, check us out, how do we look? We feel like that's the team approach, and we have inspection checklists that we use. So if we have a foreman, we have a pre-drywall inspection checklist to make sure that what's on the plans and what we've all agreed to build is actually there. We take pictures, we have as-built. We make sure that everything ends up being signed off before we even put the sheetrock up. So that's just one example of the quality checks along the way that we use to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And if we find something, you just do it over.
And how closely do you work with the building inspector, the city?
Very close. That's another relationship you need to develop. If you don't have a good relationship with the building inspector, you're going to have some trouble. So
It's the same thing with the fire department.
that's right.
We call them on
Everybody.
site right up front, make sure we understand everything that they're looking for. We have above ceilings before the ceiling can go in. We have a checklist to make sure everything's done the way it's supposed to be. It's signed off, it's checked off. It's a very detailed process.
So you would say you're going above and beyond a minimum requirement for?
Yes.
Okay.
To make sure that we deliver. And part of the fun thing that we deliver at the end is I'm not sure, we didn't talk about our, facilities page, but we have a page that we develop. We take all of our owner maintenance manuals, everything that was an inspection checklist, photos of an existing condition, something that's buried, anything underground where you would be able to look and just be able to click to see where that is and what that information is and what the equipment was, and have the O&Ms and the warranties and everything right there, and not necessarily folding through page after page.
It's on a
even
thumb
though-
drive.
Yeah, we're happy to give the traditional as-built, but we found a nice way to do training for the owner and so people can find stuff quickly is to do this facilities page.
Like, for example, the fire alarm system. Somebody comes in and explains it. The whole thing is taped, and it's on that thumb drive. So that if you have a turnover in your facilities department, that person can go and say, let me look at that thumb drive. You can click on the boiler and say, oh, that burner, yeah, that's what it is. I know what it is. I know where it was purchased. So it's pretty extensive. That's
Okay.
part of the technology that we should have mentioned maybe earlier.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap up. All
right, so
but I just have one question. I'll wrap up all my questions in one.
Okay.
At the 50,000-foot level, give me a general impression of what you think this whole project entails.
What it entails? Well, I think it entails a lot of public scrutiny, but I think the most important thing is the next 6 months, whether we're going renovation or whether we're going new in that analysis and making sure we provide you with all the information to sell that to the public. After that, we have a direction. It becomes a lot easier. Then it's making sure that we understand the budget and we keep you within that budget and there's no surprises. So the building should be the simplest part. The toughest part is getting that shovel in the ground and making sure that there's no surprises after that or during that process.
Yes, I was going to ask if administration had any questions. Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. Just a quick story relating to one of the questions asked, and that was our South High School. When we renovated that school, we talked about unseen conditions. We had the gym floor, right? Nice wood gym floor. Underneath the gym floor, we discovered was a rubberized material that contained mercury. So that had to be torn up. We had people in the school that actually wanted to take it away as souvenirs, and they came and cut it themselves. We had to quickly stop that practice. Then the contractor didn't do a great job of sealing out the entire place. So then they had already pre-staged ductwork and VAV boxes and things like that then had to be cleaned because they didn't cover it. So that's where prices can get out of hand pretty quickly if we're not careful. It's also why we carry contingency.
Yeah, on renovations, you really have to do a lot of investigative work. Get in that school, know every part of its bones and its structure and when it was renovated as much as you possibly can. And hopefully you can find most of those surprises.
So on quality control, right, we have the building inspectors, we have the fire department. The construction manager has their own quality control. There's also the architect, and there's also plan ops. I mean, myself and Gary Connors are usually on the site every day. So we're watching for things. So I really have two questions, and hopefully they're short, quick answers. There's an acronym for your safety records, EMR or something. There's a number. What is that for your company?
I think it's .06. I'll get that for you. We're a little different. We're insured through a captive, and those ratings are based upon your premium and your losses. Our premium is about 50% of everybody else's. So I will follow up with that, but it's really low.
Okay.
We have 0 OSHA violations in our 22-year history.
Maybe since so many of the team here is new, maybe you could quickly explain that to them, what that number means.
You have a premium that you pay for workman's comp based upon what your number of employees are and what you have to pay based upon whether they're carpenters or whether they're laborers or whether they are office people. It's different. And we are insured through a captive. We got invited to be in this captive, and our workman's comp is really low. And so the mod rate doesn't reflect that. So I think it's 0.86, but I'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
It's below 1.
Right.
But if it were based upon regular premiums, it would be about half that.
Okay. So his answer to that question is important because one of the things we're going to be considering is owner-controlled insurance program.
Yeah, we've done that.
Going to be my question, have you done that?
We've done that 2 different times.
Okay.
And it's worked just fine. We've done it for Bombardier Corporation, and we did it at a resort where we were doing about $200 million worth of work.
Okay.
So
just past history of the high school project, it was probably a little over $100 million actual construction costs. and the rest of it was soft costs, furniture, architect, everything else.
Yep.
So we saved about $1 million in our insurance costs by controlling our own insurance program. So I think that's something we'll be looking forward to. We have a risk management department that manages that for us.
Yeah, we're familiar with that and we understand it.
Okay.
Mr. Donovan?
And how do you deal with, assuming this is a 3 or 4 year project? And I know, well, actually, the first question is a renovation going to take how much longer than a new building?
We estimated 2 years.
2 years extra?
So we put on our construction schedule 2 years for new and 4 for reno.
Okay. So how do you deal with inflation over that time period? Do you have any processes?
Yeah.
So we've done it a couple of ways. We can lock into a specific rate ahead of time through discussing what it could be based on the understanding of what that project history or life cycle will be. Other ways is just to have
Is your
an automatic
microphone on?
kind of, excuse me. Oh,
Put your mic on.
sorry about that. Another way is to just make sure that maybe there's a percentage that everybody agrees upon, such that you have a starting point of every year, fiscal year, so to speak, for the project, and each additional year you raise it by a certain percentage.
Well, I think the cleanest way to do it is to say, what is your number? And have them qualified if they need to have some rate increase. Because you can certainly build in your labor, it's only materials.
Right.
So generally, we try to get a lump sum number. If they aren't willing to do that, then okay, what caveats have they made in their proposal, and then we need to address that.
Right.
So have you had more problems recently with that, with materials because of?
We really haven't had it affect us a lot.
Okay.
So, you know, steel, we're starting to hear rumbles that the steel market may be affected. Prices have gone up to maybe
Prices have gone up on the
10,
material.
15%.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but that's the only item that we've really had big issues with, and hopefully that's resolved before we start construction here, and we'll know the path forward with all of that.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Can I just close quickly?
Sure, go.
Okay. I think that what makes us different is that as president of the company, I'm very involved. I'll know your project inside and out. I'll understand your goals. I'll understand your numbers. I'll review them all. We'll be a true partner. I will personally guarantee you this will be a success. We'll do what you asked us, what you selected us to do. And it's about building what matters the most, and we've talked about that. But I wanted to say 2 things. I tell my kids, since they were this little, you know, nothing good in life comes without hard work. And whether it's school or sports or a job or a relationship, if you don't work hard at it, you're going to get nothing. And I think that's what our culture is. We're going to work hard. We stand ready to work hard. We're going to listen. We're going to be a driving force in making this a success. And we would love to get this. And as a matter of fact, I was just thinking that, you know, we will do that first estimate at no cost to you to determine which way you should head. I think we had a number in our proposal of what, 20 some odd thousand. We would do that at no cost. We really would like to do this.
So you're talking about the pre-construction cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck with the rest of your night.
Yeah.
Alderman
Thanks, everybody.
Mary Ann Mills-Golia?
Yes, I would just like to make a motion that we take like a 5-minute recess as we transition.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes, and the other people, I think, are already here. Okay.
Okay.
Just as a summary, we're interviewing 3 construction manager companies this evening, and hopefully, we're going to be selecting one at the end of the evening, and we will then let everyone know what our decision is. We know that all 3 companies are highly qualified, and it'll be a difficult choice, but hope we can make it. So, with that.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Bill Johnson. I'm the Director of Client Development for New Hampshire for PC Construction Company.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Sure.
Just for the
Just
TV
to let you
people.
know, this is being recorded. It's going live on TV, so.
Excellent. You can hear me there, can't you? Yeah, that's good.
Is the green light on?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Again, I'm Bill Johnson, Director of Client Development for State of New Hampshire for PC Construction Company. We're excited about being here tonight, and the reason why we're excited about being here tonight is because in the city of Nashua, we see a group of people who understand pre-construction and the value of early estimating accuracy. A lot of times we run into clients or prospects who really don't understand pre-construction and the value it really brings to early planning, early estimating, and wrapping that into the construction process. Our team tonight is going to explain how we do pre-construction using examples of what we do and how we do it, explain to you exactly how I do our early estimating and how accurate that is and the reason why it is so accurate, and how this wraps together into a successful project. So that's kind of who I am and what we're going to do. The team will introduce themselves as we go along here. So we're going to talk a little bit about about PC Construction, who we are. We're going to talk about our team. We're going to talk about our experience. We're going to talk about our approach. And we're going to talk about moving the team into construction as a whole and why PC. PC was founded in 1958. We've been around for a long time. We're 100% employee owned. When you see a PC Construction employee on the job site with a PC Construction hard hat on, you're looking at an owner. Everybody's an owner. Everybody acts like an owner. I get questions from people on job sites that are amazing. People are really interested in us as a firm. The internal clients are our employees. We do about $600 million a year in construction value. We can bond. You can see the bonding capacity. Safety performance, second to none. Extensive experience on educational campus, both higher education, and we're going to talk today about K-12. We really understand phased construction, and we're going to use some examples tonight to explain to you how we've done that in the past, in the very recent past with some other school districts. And we've also had a history of successful projects with Harriman, many projects with Harriman over the last several years, and we're going to explain that and wrap that into the discussion. We would prefer this to be a discussion. If you have questions while we're going through this, just stop us, ask the question, and we'll answer it then. I don't want you to forget it or not get it asked later on. Just ask us the questions during. It would be a lot actually easier, and we like it a lot better if we can just basically have a discussion. The slides can be the backdrop for that discussion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eve Norris, and Eve is going to go through the next few slides and introduce the team.
Great, thanks. As Bill said, we're super excited to be a part of this opportunity to be a part of this project. Now, can you hear me? There we go. Stand up. So yeah, Eve Norris, I'm Vice President of Operations over the New Hampshire office. We've assembled an excellent, really experienced team here for you tonight. Here present with us is Dan Noblet, the Senior Project Manager. To my left here, right, is Tim Summers, a project manager coming off of Kennebunk High School, very similar project, a lot of similar challenges. And to his right is Scott Eastman, is the Director of Pre-Construction and Estimating, and he'll talk about the accuracy of his estimating team. And to round out the team that we were proposed is Tim Street and Keith Pelletier are your project superintendents. And then with Scott on the estimating side is Todd Reardon and Lisa Martinez. So why choose PC? You know, why us? So really, as I said, we've got a lot of similar experience. The team that we've brought has similar experience. We're going to bring those lessons learned to the table to make your project successful. Estimating accuracy, Scott will talk about that coming up and how important that first estimate is. Team communication, as most people know, working on construction projects, especially this great pre-construction period of over a year, and then the construction process, you got to make sure that everybody gets along, everybody likes each other, everybody communicates, has a really good open dialogue. And the team that we put together is, really enjoys what they do and enjoys the construction process. exceptional cost and budget control. You'll hear a little bit about our lean and scheduling expertise, and then our emphasis on safety and quality.
Could you pull the mic a little closer, please?
Really? I think I can turn it to you after that. Little rearranging here. While we're stopped briefly, I didn't know, can y'all introduce, I know we met a few of you, would you mind just telling us your names as you go around? Is that okay? Just stop.
Let's start over here.
Dottie Oden, I'm with the Board of Education.
Susan Porter on the Board of Education.
Heather Raymond, Board of Education.
Ray Garino, Board of Education.
I'm Rick Dowd. I'm one of the local aldermen and the chair of the Joint Special School Building Committee.
Hi, I'm Patricia Klee, and I'm also on the Board of Aldermen.
Ernie Jetty, Board of Aldermen.
I'm Marianne Melizzi-Golia, and like Alderman Dowd, we're both former Board of Ed members, and I'm now a ward alderman in the city.
And I'm Dan Donovan, the Chief Operating Officer for the school district.
Sean Smith, Plant Operations Director.
Great, thank you very much for that. And now I'm going to turn it over and let you meet the team and talk about our process.
All right. Scott, Tim, and I are really going to get into the project drivers. What we see is going to, as far as communication, estimating, and phasing, what will be successful for the city of Nashua. You know, construction, phasing, communication, and teamwork are the key to this. We all need to like and respect each other throughout the whole process. The graph up here on the screen represents a table that we all must come to. We're going to bring our own experiences and expertise to the table to really decide one of the very first things is whether or not the project goes renovation or new construction. This is the part we really love at the beginning of the job. We get to know all the team members. We get to know, dive deep into the projects on hand. And a big part of communication, one thing that we're proposing to use on the project is Procore. It's a web-based program that deals with all the communication and project documents on the project. And it really lets the entire team with Harriman, City of Nashua, PC, our subcontractors, all get to the web-based program at ease, and it's really real-time updates, so everyone's up to speed.
If I could just interject, we haven't picked an architect yet, so I mean Harriman's one of 5.
No,
we're gonna interview them next week.
Okay.
So I mean your experience with them is great, but you know there may be one of the other 4 too.
Excellent.
Okay. Estimating is, that's a very important part of ensuring success for Nashua. And the early cost certainty is what we take our pride in. And typically we're within 2 to 3% of our earliest estimates to the guaranteed maximum price. And the way we do that is we have a fairly large estimating department that I head up, a 30-plus member team. The professional full-time estimators, that's really all they do is estimate. They're not people that come in between jobs. We have we have over $2 billion worth of throughput through our estimating department. Some of that is about half of it, I would say, is competitive bidding, and the other half is construction management type work. So we always have a finger on the pulse of what real costs are, and we use those costs to develop our estimate. We keep a fairly extensive historical database on cost currently for different divisions of work. Many of our estimators came from the field, and then they came into estimating to further their career in estimating, and so they had that field experience. We do all of our estimating in-house. We don't subcontract any of it out, so we're doing all divisions of work, including mechanical and electrical estimating in-house. About 1/3 of my estimators are mechanical, electrical, dedicated estimators. That's what they do. And the way that we get our early cost certainty is detailed estimating on even schematic level documents. So when we have documents that really don't show everything that's going to be there, we know what's going to end up there, so we'll put that in our estimate. And it's in a detailed format. It's not square foot type numbers that you're going to see. You're actually going to see the detail in the estimate. And that really ensures cost certainty. Plus, it gives you a foundation. That first estimate is so important. It gives you a foundation to work off of, to add or subtract to as you're going along through the design process.
Question. The biggest part of the first part of this is renovate Elm Street versus build new. Build new should be fairly easy to estimate within a % or two. Renovating Elm Street, there's a lot of unknown unknowns. So when you're estimating a price, are you estimating some type of contingency for those unknowns? Or are you coming up with some type of risk factor? Can you just explain how you're going to cover that particular estimate?
Okay, so yes, I will. A big part of what we do especially on renovations, we'll do field investigation. So our estimators will actually visit the job with the designer. We work hand in hand with the designer, with the school district, Nashua School District, and our estimators, and they'll go through, do that field investigation. Then we will put our detail together based on that, the documents, the desired outcome of the school district. Then as we're going through the estimate, when we get to it all put together, we'll talk about our comfort level with what we have and what we don't know yet. And then we'll establish a contingency at that time to lead us through the design process. But we also rely on our historical database because we've done a fair amount of school renovations. So we can go back through those and say, well, after we do our detail, we'll see our total, say, for mechanical. We'll say, well, mechanical typically ran between, X number of dollars a square foot to X number of dollars a square foot. And we should be in that zone. And if we're way high or way low, then we're probably missing something. But generally, we'll fall into those zones, and we'll use our historical database as a back check based on the schools that we've renovated. And we've got, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 schools in process right now, and probably half of them are renovations. So,
You handle the unknown unknowns by change order?
Well, we will establish a GMP based on what we know, and we'll carry a contingency to try to cover the unknowns. But if there's things in a renovation that are completely unknown, like something unforeseen condition, then that probably would end up, being a change condition after the GMP is established.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we work hard to try to not have as unknowns, but they're just that, unknowns. But we also try to put some allowances to some items that we know, okay, we don't know what this is, but we know you're going to have to move some utilities in a certain area in order to get something in. So we'll carry an allowance for that. So we try to cover it within the body of the GMP, everything that we can think of. And that's why it's that team effort of really everyone throwing things at the wall to make sure that we've picked up. There's still going to be those unforeseens that no one can even anticipate, but with our history and our lessons learned, we could really put together a strong list so that we're inclusive.
And there are situations where we know what kinds of things have been unknown in the past, and we would suggest maybe further investigation prior to the GMP so that we can get that stuff in our bid packages. Maybe investigation behind a wall or investigation in the ground somewhere. We've done that, test pitting, and it's money that you can spend up front that will prevent change orders, after the GMP has been established.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Jettie.
I think that this school was built...
Mike.
Sorry. I think that this school was built by the WPA, and it's a model that was repeated throughout the country. I know it's been renovated in the past and added to and stuff, but This basic model, have you worked on any schools with this basic model before, renovating them?
Yeah, I think I could take that. Yes, the project actually that is on this slide right here is Kennebunk High School, built in 1939. Very, very similar to what your school looks like, work project back in the 30s. I'm just looking at your building, I'm assuming that there's probably pyroblock walls that have hanging steel channels over your lockers. There's probably, there's probably some abatement that's going to be required. It's probably, masonry bearing walls and things like that. So this school, very similar to actually South Portland High School, which was built in the 1930s, a little earlier than 1939, I believe. Very similar construction, those two schools. So I think with some investigation in the field, I think we'd have a pretty good handle on how this building is built, and what some of the pitfalls that we've seen historically on some of these other projects that we can maybe try to avoid. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about this project. Your project excites me because, like I said, it's very similar to the Kennebunk High School project. Main building was built in 1939, and then there were several other additions in the 60s and in the 80s, and also very similar to South Portland High School. So we are familiar with that, and this is a great time to get a construction manager on board, because what we can do is engineer this project for cost benefit for the project. So we can engineer phasing so that you minimize your costs in temporary classrooms. South Portland High School, for an example, was a hard bid job, but we worked with the school and found a way to save $100,000 of the school's money by resequencing some phasing, doing some things early, and it actually saved them a substantial amount of money in temporary classrooms. On this project, we scoured, in fact, this project was one of 3 schools, 1 project. So it was Kennebunk High School and then 2 smaller elementary schools, all wrapped up into one project. And so what we did was we found temporary classroom space at other schools after we renovated some of those the other 2 schools. We actually brought temporary classrooms from those schools to Kennebunk High School in sequence, and allowed them not to have to, they only had to rent 2 portable classrooms, which saved them several $100,000 in costs that, it's not going to a program or a gymnasium or, some better computer. It's out the window. So that's the really exciting part about being able to get in early, working with the architect and the owner, and finding that, engineering the job ahead of time so that it's, you're spending your money on program and not temporary classrooms or, soft costs. So this is just a little graphic of that project again that we put together. And this is the kind of thing that we would do with your successful architect and with the owners to come up with and engineer that best fit. Construction project's a major endeavor in a school. If you go the renovation route, there's a lot of sequencing that needs to happen. There's a lot of coordination with things like athletics and plays and drama and everything else. It's a living, breathing school, and it's almost never unoccupied. So there's a lot of coordination. You really need to hire somebody with the experience and with the patience to really sit down and understand that program. So.
We just wanted to dive a little more into our experience. Tim hit upon them quite a bit. The first one up there is Dover High School. It's very similar to this project, where once we were part of the project team, we went in and analyzed and evaluated 3 different types of construction plans. One was a complete renovation. The second plan was a mixture of both renovation and new construction. And the third was an all-new facility. After the evaluation, the project team got together, and Dover ended up going with a completely new facility, which just happened to be the most expensive route. But after all the evaluation, that was what the best fit for them. Tim hit upon South Portland a little bit, where we eliminated the need for temporary classrooms by expediting the schedule. He pretty much covered Kennebuck High School there by the phasing and scheduling. We really supported their classroom requirements and made that project work. Another great example is Rice Memorial High School. Once we got on board again as a team, we sat through and created a multi-phased plan, and amazingly we were able to reduce the project by 15 months. So you can just imagine how much that saved that school, and we're able to put it towards program instead. Robert Connors Elementary School, we worked with the project team to come up with basically consolidating 2 elementary schools and putting more than 900 students into the new elementary school. And Scarborough High School was another one where we had 14 phases. We did that to enable all the schools to stay on, all the students to stay on campus throughout the whole entire construction process. So how do we get there? We want to talk about our pre-construction process. A lot of our activities really puts the project on the right path moving forward. For example, schedule management and pre-con, it's not just creating a schedule for the construction side of things, but we'll be scheduling and working with the team for a complete schedule, including any permits, approvals, everything through pre-construction, design, except the GMP, et cetera, all the way through construction. And then the very first thing you've already asked a question on is, whether or not this project goes renovation or new construction. That would be a huge part of the pre-construction process. Team meetings, it's a must. We've talked about the communication in the team. We really like to come together with all parties to make sure everyone's on the same page and moving in the same goal moving forward. Scott's hit upon the accurate estimating and his staff that we get to take advantage of. Again, that first accurate estimate sets the goal for all of the estimates throughout pre-construction. Then the constructability and value analysis. Tim Summers, myself, the superintendent, Tim Street, we really like to sit down, flip through page by page, look at the details, especially when it comes to the envelope system. We like to see how we can improve to the design to make sure everyone walks out of here with a nice tight building, and that's just one example. And then Scott hit upon it earlier, with a renovation, we'll get out in the field and do an architectural investigation, get our heads into the existing building and try to use our experience to help assist the design during the pre-construction process.
So a little bit about estimating. So we're going to, in the beginning, we'll be doing different options for the renovation versus the new construction. But as we do these options, again, to just emphasize the importance of having a detailed estimate, not relying on outside sources for whole divisions of work. We will go and get material pricing and equipment pricing, but we basically have 3 scenarios here. When we develop the estimate in detail, we have one scenario, the scenario 1, where you may want to reduce cost by taking items out of the program. And so that's an example of taking items out of the program. So we'll have detail in landscaping so that you can see plantings, where they are and where you could reduce them. Maybe like we have a patio there and it's made out of one material and we would put in a different material. So you would have those like kind of straight line reductions. Scenario number 2 is we typically will base our estimate. There'll be like a basis of the estimate materials, and alternate materials are either added or deducted from that that base estimate. So in this situation, we have an example of where our base estimate had a ceramic floor in one area, and then maybe you have a couple of options to go to a rubber floor, which would be a deduct from the base, or upgrade to a wood floor, which would be an add to the base. So if you were getting square foot numbers, you really wouldn't be able to do this kind of analysis. And when you see our estimates, we'll be doing these kinds of analysis throughout the pre-construction. The third is like an alternative type scenario where we have a window in an exterior wall, and maybe we want to reduce the glass area of the building. Well, again, because we're doing the detail, you get the reduction of the glass, of the shade, the window shade, the wood trim around the window, and then that stuff goes away, but then you have to put materials back in. So like the painting of the drywall, the insulation, the air vapor barrier, the studs, the brick, all that has to go back in. And again, it's something that you don't get that kind of resolution unless you do detailed estimating. So we track all this on our cost tracking log, which after we've done that base estimate, you'll have a base estimate that you will have a total. And as you're going through the pre-construction period between estimates, you can actually add or deduct those items. And this is like a live worksheet that everybody on the project team would have, so that they could actually add or deduct, and at any given time you can see where the project stands. So if I want to swap out my ceramic floor for wood floor, I can check that box and I can say, okay, it adds this much to the cost, and this would be the total budget. And you would go down through and you'd pick the adds or the deducts. We keep those sorted in like items where you like to have it, or you will take it, or you won't take it. So you can kind of play with those different items and try to figure out what path you want to go down.
We're going to give the architects some real guidance on how we want the school to look, both from educational functionality, safety, energy efficient, and attractive. When we built these two high schools, I was part of this committee, and this building was built to last. Your ceiling tiles, you can't stick a pencil in it because they're that kind of ceiling tile. The sheetrock, especially in common areas, you could put a chair, smash a chair and it won't break. So we don't want to reduce things where it's going to increase maintenance costs, because as Mr. Smith can tell you, getting money for maintenance costs is a lot harder than building a new school. Okay, so we don't want to back into any numbers. When we have a design from the architects that we all approve, that's what we want built.
Right, and that's part of the reason why we call our log cost tracking log, is because sometimes you want to add things to it that will actually add value to your building, such as abuse-resistant drywall. And you may have areas where you don't have it, but if it fits into the budget, you'd like to add it. So that would go onto our cost tracking log, and you could check it and say, hey, yeah, that's something that we'd want to add.
It's really just that real-time analysis as we are going through, maintaining that budget and keeping everybody's thoughts that are thrown out there. So it's kind of, everyone has it and you can just track it as you go. So it just kind of keeps it in line.
And remind the other board members, if you have questions as we go along, ask them.
Yeah, please raise your hand or shout out.
I raised my hand too, but you can't see it.
Just press a button, Bill.
I know. I wanted to, I listened to you say about the maintenance, but also thinking about the efficiency of the building, and the safety provisions. What kind of materials to use to install to keep the building safe?
All right. Alderman Lizzie Golia?
Yes, thank you. This is a little bit of housekeeping detail. We will be having someone transcribing this also. I'm sorry.
Move.
We will be having someone transcribing this. So as each of you shift, because she's not familiar with your voice, if you would just identify yourself, because I was sitting here listening to you thinking we're going to be asked why we didn't ask you to do that. So I know it's a pain, but again, it just helps them transcribe it.
Even though we have video, she does it from a
Yeah.
Sure.
digital
Okay,
file.
thank you very much.
Okay, well,
Okay, well, you should know me by now. One of the senior members of the Board of Education, William Mosier, and the working mechanical department supervisor or superintendent for 3 different railroads, and a federal safety inspector. So, yeah. Now you got a brief overview.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, this is Tim Summers again, project manager. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about schedule management, and then in a couple other slides we'll get into some of the mechanical and systems work that we've done. But I wanted to give you a sense of how we plan the work, because another advantage of a construction manager getting on early and engineering the project is really working on project flow. And quite frankly, the better we can present the job to the subcontractors, the better workflow and confidence that they have in the project, the better number we're going to get. So we do a 3-stepped approach. We do a milestone planning. That's your project schedule, what we'd call contractual project schedule that we'd go through, and we'd identify those milestones, those things that we have to hit, be it building weather tight, be it wing A ready for students. And so we identify those milestones, and then we do what's called make-ready planning. A lot of folks in in lean circles, like the Toyota type lean, would call this pull planning. So what we do is we get our subcontractors together, and we actually make all of our subcontractors help us develop a plan to get to that milestone. And we identify the work that has to happen. We build camaraderie within the subcontractors so that they're helping each other out, and we're understanding what pitfalls there might be. And so we lay a plan to get to that milestone. And then on a more granular level, we put together a weekly work plan. We look at that make-ready planning, those items to get to the milestone, and we say, okay, what do we have to do this week? What do we have to get done this week? And we plan that work, and then daily, we have a 10-minute meeting with the foreman and say, I'm going to be, erecting steel in this quadrant, and, I'm going to be roughing in plumbing here so that those folks aren't meshing together and tripping over themselves, so to speak. So we really try to lay that out so that it's an efficient build, and I think our, the subcontractors that work with us realize that, we do that and appreciate that.
So going back to, I'm sorry, this is Dan Noblet. Thank you for the reminder. Going back to the accountability in our first estimate, really, we're held accountable from that first estimate all the way through the GMP, or the guaranteed maximum price. The process we use is kind of summarized up on the board for the competitive bidding, the procurement process. The first thing we do is create a procurement plan, go out on the street and advertise and pre-qualify the subcontractors. We'll go and educate the bidders through pre-bid meetings, and really go out and look for any specialty subcontractors that we might need for the project, and look for any local subcontractors as well. A big part of what we do is defining the scope of work. We really want a detailed scope of work in our bid packages to pick up any of those unforeseens or scope gaps. It basically eliminates surprises and reduces change orders by having a very defined scope of work. Then the bids will be opened with the architect and the owner, and we'll create a post-bid review, very detailed review, and put it together, basically put the guaranteed maximum price together, recommend it to the team, and then get it awarded by the city of Nashua. We really wanted to show this because we've been in New Hampshire for 30-plus years. Nowadays, we have a local knowledge out of our Manchester, New Hampshire office with the local contractors, but nowadays it's hard to get a good amount of bidders, you know, the 3 or 4 bidders in one division on a project. Everyone's very busy. So we really wanted to show that we have a strong New England reach, and we're able to dip into some of our other offices in New England to make sure we get that competitive edge and numbers at bid time in the GMP process.
All right, Tim Summers again. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about buildings and systems. Another advantage of getting a CM on board is being able to work with architects and owners on mechanical systems. We have a large staff of estimators that are experienced in many different mechanical systems. There are several options now. Technology keeps improving on different mechanical systems. I know you would like a displacement system. I think that's a really good system. There's all kinds of options for boilers and all kinds of different things. And we like to go through the process with the owners and the architects. We know that there's not a lot of money for maintenance. So, you know, these things want to be procured in such a way that you know, the maintenance is as minimal as possible. And also, frankly, there's some opportunity to maybe single source. If you're going to do 3 projects, we did this on the Kennebunk U21 project. We were actually able to procure some of those mechanical equipment packages in-house and then direct those to the successful plumbing or mechanical bidder. We do that actually all the time. And what that does is that's an advantage where, you know, if you really like Trane, or if you really like Dakin, or something like that, we can buy a package, or even if you don't care and you just want, you know, all 3 schools to have a similar mechanical package, so there's sort of a one source, we can buy that as a package. And quite frankly, you get a better price when you put a bigger package together for 3 schools. So those are some of the options that we'd like to, you know, work with the owner and architect on. We like to understand the day-to-day operations, how these things get maintained, so that we can, you know, provide some comment on, you know, what might work best. We have an in-house, what we call virtual construction department. We produce 3D models of coordinated drawings, mechanical piping and plumbing and ductwork, as an example right there. And we also have a lot of experience with school-specific systems. You know, it's an unfortunate part of school construction now that, you know, lockdown systems and the integration of the security system into the school is a critical piece. And it's you know, it's integration with door hardware, and it's integration with fire alarm systems and communication systems, and, you know, integration to the police and fire department. So we have a lot of experience working through those problems and really making sure that the systems that are chosen work well together and, you know, have a, you know, work for the common goal of providing a safe environment.
So this is Dan Noblet. Adequate staffing is really vital to Nashua's projects to meet the project goal and schedule. You know, it's really important that we put the right supervision on each project in order to look after the owner's best interests when it comes to safety, quality control, schedule, and budget. You know, I will be your leader through pre-construction all the way through construction, and then also all the staff that goes from pre-construction through construction you'll have right at your fingertips. So it's a very smooth transition from start to finish.
So this is Tim Summers again. So moving into construction safety, you know, our company culture is around safety. We want to make sure that every contractor, owner, representative, whoever it is that comes on our site leaves in exactly the same way that they showed up in the morning. That's our highest priority. These schools, especially Elm Street Middle School, it's a congested area. There's a lot of people around. There's going to be a lot of truck traffic. If that's, if that project is chosen, it's going to be a lot of truck traffic around. So, there needs to be a lot of thought put into the safety, the security of the construction site. So that's a very high priority for us. We're used to doing that. We've done it on multiple projects, multiple school projects.
If I could interject a quick question. Is it EMR rating, your safety rating, and there's a ratio, it's generally around 1 or less than that. Do you know what your number is?
I'm not.
For insurance purposes, really.
Sure.
0.55 this year, I think.
0.55?
I don't know
Okay.
exactly
I can
what it is.
confirm that, but I think that's what I just
Okay,
saw.
roughly around there, okay.
So second to none, after safety being the highest priority is our quality control program. It really starts in pre-construction. We work with the team to analyze the products. We look at product compatibility, making sure that everything's going to work. The building envelopes become critical these days. We want to make sure that we've put all the materials in the right place for that. We have, we do mock-ups of the building envelope to make sure that they're sealed, caulked, every layer is put in there, and we build that and take pictures of that as we go. We review the constructability, and we have a really stringent QA QC program. We assign someone on the project as the quality control person for that. We have pre-construction meetings with every subcontractor before they come on site, and it's really with their foreman, the one that's actually going to be doing the installation, not the project manager that sends them out there. So we really want to make sure they know exactly what they're doing, where the carpet seam's going to go before they go out there and put the carpet seam. Field investigation, looking at maintainability. So we really take pride in that quality control and really eliminating any surprises as we move forward. I'm Eve Norris. Sorry.
Tim Summers again. So what sets us apart, one of the fun little things that we like to do is get, as we can, get involved, students, community groups. I've been working for PC for 16 years, and I don't think there's been a year that's gone by I haven't taken a scout troop or, a class through a project. This is a recent scout trip that we had, but it's really neat. We like to let these groups leave knowing that it's more than just hammers and nails when it comes to construction. There's a lot of engineering involved. There's a lot of thought process involved. There's a lot of written and verbal communication skills required. So we like to share that with the younger folks.
Especially with the Girl Scouts and promoting, this is Eve again, the women in construction and the STEM programs. So you've met our team. Hopefully you got to know them a little bit in this short time frame that we had to share with you, and really talking about your project and what we can bring to the value to your project to bring it to success. Really the similar experience. We have a ton of lessons learned that we'd love to help out with this. The estimating accuracy that Scott talked to. Excellent team communication, exceptional cost and budget control. Our lean process, we've put that on all of our projects, our scheduling expertise, and our emphasis on safety and quality. We really think those all separate us from the rest. And that ends our program, and really appreciate the questions in between, because that's really where we do best. We don't present as well as we like to talk about what we do and how we can help. So,
any additional questions about anyone from the committee? Mr. Smith?
Hi, so we talked about safety a little bit. So one of the things we're considering is OSIP program, owner-controlled insurance program. Do you have any experience with that program? It's
Ben and Jerry's that?
Look at that. No, we have not. We haven't looked into it, but we have never done a project with the OSIP before. So we generally have, carried our own or had our subcontractors. But that is something we've explored with our insurance company, but it's never been financially viable on most of the projects that we've looked at. So we'd be glad to explore that with you.
Okay. Yeah, it's really more of a burden on the city, actually, because we hire our own people to
Right, I think when we have looked at it, we looked at it for us handling that, and it didn't, work out, but I think that would be great.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes, I think you mentioned that Dover, New Hampshire you were talking about, chose to renovate as opposed to, even though it was a higher cost. Do you have any reasons why they did that? Was it the building, the location?
It was a new, they didn't go reno, they went with the new project.
Oh, they went new.
Yeah, they went with the new, this is Scott, and HMFH was the architect, and their main concern with the existing school was that the way that kids were taught did not fit the format of the school. And so what they were saying was, hey, the school has, I can't remember when that was built, like the 50s maybe. So the schools, they were saying the bones were like 60 years old, and you could start with a new school with the right layout and everything for the way kids are taught today. So that really is what the school selection committee ended up really liking, the new format, and it was off-site. You didn't have to do the phasing. It was actually not off-site, it was adjacent to the school, and so we did all the construction.
Now, in a project where you're deciding renovation versus new, how much longer does it typically take for the renovation than new? I know it depends on
I think it really depends on the phasing. If there was we're involved in a school project now where the school is actually completely evacuating the school, so obviously that is a huge time saver. But if it's, if you have to add, build an addition and then move the school over to the addition and then build the renovation piece, then, that obviously takes a lot longer to do, because you're not able to flow through the entire school as if it was an empty vacant school or a new construction.
This is Eve. We would, really dive in first on that, and we can lay out a schedule very quickly once we understand the dynamics and what has to stay open, how many classrooms you need, how many students have to be in places. And I was a part of the RICE project where we literally saved the 15 months, and we really dug down deep, challenged the school to utilize other spaces more efficiently and more effectively, again, kind of throwing ideas around, utilize the Christmas breaks, utilize Thanksgiving week. So we just went in every chance we could, and we were able to shorten that duration, which saved tons on the end. So it really depends on how much everyone can assist in that renovation piece. So.
Okay, thanks.
All set? Smith.
Where do you see so security, you mentioned that, a lot of it's door hardware and access control and other stuff like that. Where do you see, construction-wise, most of the dollars being spent now?
Relative to just this is Tim Summers, relative to the safety, to the lockdown system and that type of thing, or?
Just school security in general.
Yeah.
How do you keep the bad guys out?
There again is several options that we'd love to explore with you. There are some schools that go with a complete electric lockdown system of all their classroom doors, and that's obviously a costly endeavor. There are mechanical locks for classroom doors where the teacher inside the classroom can operate the door from the inside. Obviously, that's less costly on the electrified hardware side of things. So there's a it's a varied options, and really it comes down to what program and what fits best. And we're, like Scott has identified, we can lay those options all out. We can estimate the amount of electric required to electrify every door, and then we can provide, a deduct to go with just mechanical doors. And just one example, it runs the gamut.
You go crazy with
bulletproof glass at the entrance, and the whole 9 yards. Yep.
All set? One last question I have is, being a logistics specialist for 33 years, have you ever done a life cycle cost analysis, the renovation versus the new build? What I mean is, assuming the new school will be a lot more energy efficient and have better construction materials than the old school, which one over the 5 to 10 years going forward will be less expensive to maintain?
Scott, have you done estimating life cycle?
Well, with the life cycle, generally, the estimating that we do, the life cycle is done by the engineers, the architects. They'll give us those numbers, and then we compile them. But as far as actually doing the life cycle calculations, the engineers are who's always done it for us.
For instance, right now, Elm Street has huge energy consumption. And presumably, a new school is going to have far less, So looking at the cost to the city with each alternative is very important.
Yeah, they have to do the energy modeling,
Yeah.
and then we can go from there. So they'll actually run the existing school through energy modeling, and then they'll be able to tell us, what the savings are in BTUs or equipment sizing or.
We'll be able to price all the different types of systems for them and give them the information. And it's mostly a life cycle assist, so they'll take the information and the costs up front and what it'll cost to put in, and then evaluate it as a whole.
Okay. Everyone else set? Thank you very much for coming in. We have one more group to go through, and hopefully after that, we will be selecting one to move forward. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
tonight, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Dowd, I move we take like a 5-minute recess.
She beat you to it.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
Yeah. So we'll take 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 9:15 with the next couple. To reconvene the meeting. We will now be hearing from Harvey Construction Corporation, and whenever you're ready, gentlemen, take it over.
Thank you very much. I apologize for the delay, but we're here.
Lock you out.
I kind of took it personally, but don't worry. Sean saved the day, and I'm back. Thank you very much for having us in tonight. We really appreciate this. Obviously, hopefully, you all understand how important this is to us, being a partner of the district for many years. What our plan today is to spend a little time, and we'll get you back on schedule. Something like that. We'll get you home on time. We want to just review our experience a little bit, talk a little bit about how we partner with our clients, specifically the Nashua School District. Talk a little bit about our pre-construction services, which is very important based on the decisions that you have to make in front of you.
Sorry about that. Okay.
I'm sorry, also introduce yourself for the transcriptionist. I forgot. Sorry.
That's quite all right. So thank you very much for having us in tonight. We appreciate it. My name is Rob Prunier. I'm a principal with Harvey. And with me today, I'll let them introduce themselves.
Carl DuBois, Vice President, Pre-Construction Director.
Mike Halliday, Project Superintendent.
Kathy Misko, Project Manager.
So, we're here today to talk to you about some things and try to demonstrate to you why we think we're the best firm to partner with for the plans for a renovated or a new middle school. We're going to share with you some of our experience, how we approach the pre-construction side of things and the planning, which we think is a critical part of this process that you go through as you analyze which is the best options for the school district. Talk a little bit about how we deal with an occupied school and deal with the logistics that go along with that, as well as our approach to sustainability and how we try to make sure that our projects are energy efficient and good for the environment. And we'll talk a little bit more. We'll finish up by talking a little bit about our experience building new schools and renovating schools. Very quickly, Harvey's been around since 1939. We've been we were in Manchester when we started. We're in Bedford, New Hampshire now. We are consistently recognized as one of the best construction companies in the state. We've won 8 consecutive Bob Awards, which is best of business, and we like that because the public actually votes on that. So it's more than just a group of people in a room. 68% of our work in 2017 was for repeat clients. We expect that to creep a little higher in at the end of this year when we look back. From a bonding perspective, we're in very strong financial position. We have plenty of bonding capacity to take on this job. 90% of our work is construction management, and we still like to bid work, so 10% of our work is still in the general contracting phase, and we think that's a benefit to our clients. It keeps us sharp, keeps us in tune with the market. Tides have turned, and clients are getting smarter, and they want their contractor at the table at the conceptual side of a project with the architect. So more and more of our business is coming through the construction management delivery process. We're highly involved with many organizations, nonprofits, and industry organizations throughout the state, and we're proud of our support of those organizations. And certainly we've done a lot of schools over the years. About 30 to 35% of our annual business is in the educational realm of construction. I should note that virtually all, we have one project in Lowell right now, but virtually all of our work is in New Hampshire. That's kind of what we care about. That's what we focus on. That's where we think we have the greatest leverage for our clients. Deep breath. Very quickly, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but certainly you're aware of the number of schools that we've done in Nashua, and we've partnered with many of you trying to get these projects done. Our reputation in Nashua, our experience in Nashua kind of runs the gamut. Dartmouth-Hitchcock, Cotton Mill Square, the Nashua Y is another example of our partnerships in Nashua. More on a regional basis, we do a lot of work with St. Paul's School. We just finished 3 renovation projects for them over the last 18 months or so. The Curry Museum of Art, and Anheuser-Busch. I don't typically bring alcohol-related clients to a school district presentation, but the important part there is in 1969, Anheuser-Busch brought Harvey onto campus in Merrimack, and we've been there every day since. We're there today. It's a long-standing partnership, and I think that has to do with the culture that we bring to the table, the sense of cooperation and teamwork. And it's really tested the tested time, and since 1969, we've been a servant to Anheuser-Busch in more ways than one, I guess.
Do you want questions as we go along, or do you want to?
I would be happy to field any questions. I'm sorry. Please, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Let us know.
I was just going to point out the one thing on Sunset Heights. The new members were looking at the cost and saw that the cost was significantly higher. Mike. The costs were a little higher than at the end. That's because when we get into the project, as Carl can well attest, we found out there were roof structural problems and had to put new steel in the roofs from inside the building. And that was very expensive. We had to add to the cost of the bond for the project. So it had nothing to do with anybody overrunning anything. They still finished the project, had a schedule, and under budget.
It's interesting that you asked that because, or that you mentioned that, because when we were preparing for tonight, we kind of get asked questions to try and prepare ourselves for things that might come up. And I asked Mike Halliday, who was the superintendent on the Sunset Heights project, of all the projects you've done with the city, what is something that you may have changed to make better? And he struggled. We sat there in dead silence for 5 minutes as he tried to think about it. But he did hit that point exactly and said that he wished that we had caught that a little sooner so it would have been incorporated in the scope sooner. It had to be done anyways, but you're absolutely right. We worked through that process and made it all happen without changing the schedule as well.
One of the interesting things also on that was that did get put into the project later, into the program than we anticipated, but we were able to work with our subcontractors to make sure that we didn't lose any time. And that system that we put in was a two-piece truss system that had to get installed from inside, as you spoke about. But in order to prevent us from losing time on the schedule, we needed to work with our steel subcontractor, and we developed a method on the first phase to install web members rather than the two-piece joist in the first phase of the boiler room so that we didn't lose any time. So that was just one of the examples of working with our local subcontractors to make sure that we didn't have an impact on the schedule.
I'm sorry.
Another part of that school, somebody asked earlier about unknown unknowns, the overhangs falling off the building because the baling wire didn't hold up from the previous time it was built. Nothing to do with you guys or even the architects, but That was an unknown.
Yeah, and we were able to, again, take that issue and resolve it without having an impact on the overall schedule. So it was, again, us working well with our subcontractors to minimize those impacts.
We're good on that?
Yep.
Okay. We don't pump ourselves up on awards quite often, but we'll take the advantage to share some thoughts with you on that. These projects are projects that have been recognized mostly in New Hampshire through AIA and the Architectural Institute.
American Institute of Architects.
And the AGC, which is Associated General Contractors. I can figure that one out. But we're proud of the accomplishments that we've had and the projects that we've completed. So it really all lends itself to the fact that we really believe that we bring the leverage with the subcontractor market and the sense of cooperation and commitment to our New Hampshire clients, specifically our Nashua clients, to really finish with great product when we're done with the project.
I just want to take the time to review our organization and the strong experience that we have for those of you who may not be familiar with us. It may be tough to see on the screen there, but our org chart has dark green and light green blocks on it, and the light green colors are representation of folks who will be involved in the pre-construction phase and the construction phase. We have a lot of knowledge right here, as you can tell from the stories and the history with all the projects. So just kind of moving across from left to right, working as a team. Obviously, Carl leads up the pre-construction efforts. Rich Burke deals with the estimating piece of it with all the staff you see underneath and resources that we have to put towards estimating, whether it be renovation or the new project. And I think some of that's already been done as well for budgetary purposes. Kind of down the center, the staff we have in the office to help me with executing the project. It would be a project engineer, Carter. We have mechanical, electrical, process mechanical coordinators available to us if we need that, depending on what route we go, what kind of design. Either design, if we need it, we have it. And then the right-hand side moves more towards Mike and our superintending staff. We like to get them involved in constructability and scheduling even before we hit the ground. So they can weigh in and help us make the right decisions for you guys with how the project moves forward in the design. So I'm really excited these guys are here and look forward to working with Carl again for the Nashua School District, but also with Mike. So Mike's done a lot of good work here for the district. If you actually flip to the next page, there's just kind of a chart demonstrating the experience that the people on the org chart have were working in renovated schools, working in new buildings, working in Nashua. So a lot of years of experience up there, and I think we do a great job for you and have a great team. But let's have Carl start talking about some of the pre-construction efforts.
Thanks. It's where the rubber hits the road. Everything starts with an estimate and everything starts with a schedule. I know the program, been involved with it. For those that don't know us, I've actually, we'll talk about it a little bit here, spent a fair amount of time at Elm Street looking at that school, trying to truly understand how it was put together over the years and what the issues are with it. But the way we start, you need a roadmap on how to get to where you got to go, and that's a master schedule that takes into effect all the pre-construction activities to keep everybody on task. There are many people that are going to be involved in this project through the city forces, from us, from subcontractors, from engineers, architects, the building department, the fire department. Everybody's got to get involved, so everybody has to understand and all pull the train in the same direction. How we do that is by starting with a master schedule. So we'll put a master schedule together, get feedback from the architect and engineers to make sure we've given them ample amount of time. We'll finalize all of that, and then we'll pick up, I'd like to pick up where we left off, looking at this back in 2017, looking at Elm Street. I think there's a lot of good work that's been done on that project, and I think we can utilize those efforts to help speed the process up as we go through it. One of the first things that really needs to happen out there is we've been putting these SWAT teams together where we take our people, combine them with the architect and the engineers, and we will get out there during school vacations, depending on the timing, to try to really get a good handle on what's going on and what we haven't found that we need to know and understand. I mean, as we know, and Sean can attest to, there are some big issues out there, potentially big issues out there. The floor structural element is one that's some concern to all of us, and the numbers that I put together, we didn't look at it. So we got to go in there and truly, as a team approach, get through it so we can come back and put a comprehensive report in front of you. What are the pluses and minuses of developing and redeveloping, I should say, Elm Street for the next 30, 40, 50 years, and what it's really going to take. You take that along with looking at a potential new school, and you will have the answers, all the information that you need to make an informed decision on which way to move forward, whether to go new or actually renovate Elm Street. If Elm Street is the preferred method in construction, working in and amongst an ongoing operation like Elm Street presents a much different array of challenges in order that we have to overcome. And what we've done in all the other schools that we've renovated in the city is we'll develop what we call a phasing plan. And what this is it shows not only the folks that we're dealing with around this table, but we use this as a tool to educate the instructors, the teachers, and we've done informative sessions with the neighborhoods and invite the parents in so they will have a comfort level that their child's not going to be affected by what's going on. So we will lay out exactly how we plan to move around the school, what the timing element is for each phase, so there are no surprises and everybody understands how they're going to, how their child is going to be affected. They will be affected. They're going to be shifted in their classrooms in order for us to get in there and renovate. The other thing we do, and we've done this on every job that we've done, we'll do a site logistics plan. One of the things we got to be careful of is it's an ongoing school. We're cognizant of that. We try to make sure that we separate ourselves, the construction activities from the ongoing educational activities. So we look at things such as construction access. We will segregate ourselves with walls, partitions, signage, and fencing. We go as far as making sure that deliveries are not going to be taken during bus drop-off and pickup times. We coordinate all of that work. These two tools are a good use when you sit down, like I said, with parents and teachers, so they understand when they show up. Most of these have been in September when they come back, what they're going to face and what they're going to see. There's no surprises. And it's worked out very, very well. And we would do the same thing if it was Elm Street. Working on a green site all by yourself, those issues go away. It's much, much easier. But the congestion because of an inner city school, there's challenges that we got to learn about, talk about, know about. We will coordinate with the fire department. We're going to coordinate with the police department as far as emergency access for fire alarms and all of that stuff. That is all talked out, and everybody's on the same page before we put a hammer to anything. As I said earlier, we talked about, I did a little bit of work on, the Joint Special asked us to look at the school. The chart on your left, this goes back to August of 17. We worked hand in hand. At the time, we were working with Harriman Associates, completing Sunset, and they put together a program of what they prescribed is what they would do for additions and what they saw for renovations. We took that information, put an estimate together, had to figure out really how to get through that school. There is no swing space, as you're aware. Those temporaries have been there since I moved to Nashua 30 years ago. When I was finished back in 2017 for 217,000 square feet, I was looking at $48 million. Because one of the major additions that they talked about was getting rid of the cafeteria and the kitchen. And that's not something you can build in 6 or 8 weeks, what we call a summer slam. You need a lot more time. So we were doing temporary kitchens. We were doing temporary cafeterias. We were utilizing some of the same techniques that saved the city a lot of money, and that is utilizing the gymnasium for temporary classrooms. Because you have to create space to evacuate kids out and teachers out of their classrooms in order to renovate them. There, Sean.
Corey, you might want to stress that that's the construction cost.
Yeah,
Particularly there's some new people on the committee.
I was going to get there. This is hard construction costs. There's two pieces to every construction project we call hard cost, which is the bricks and mortar, and we call soft cost. Soft cost is the engineering fees, architect, engineer, geotechnical services, an industrial hygienist, if you've got abatement to do. It's your furniture, fixtures, and equipment. If you took a school and you turned it over and shook it, everything that's loose, the chairs, the tables, all that, that's soft cost. So the combination of the two give you total project costs. What you're looking at the 48 is strictly hard costs. You'd add 20-25% to that number for soft costs. That's typically what it ranges. The chart on your right, as Rob alluded to, we do a tremendous amount of school construction. Like you said, about 30% of our annual volume is school construction. All those in black are ones that we've been involved with. The two in the red are two bid jobs that we bid in Maine. We were the bridesmaid, but we've got all that information and updated information from a bid standpoint. If you're going to bid a school out, what that cost would come in at. So when you look at the very bottom and you look at the new middle school, if you wanted to do a new middle school, you're looking, I think it's 180 square feet per student. If you're looking at a 1,000 square foot school, you need 180,000 square feet. And we give you a range of $250 to $300 a square foot. And the primary delta there that is a little unknown is the site itself. Every site comes with its own challenges. All the good sites have been used. So you're dealing with either wetlands, or you're dealing with rock, or you're dealing with poor soils. So we're showing you as a range. That again is construction costs. So all told, you'd probably be in the $60-65 million range for a new school. The major difference is, instead of 48 months, you're only looking at 18 to 24 months, based on our experience on that size school, on what it would take to get it completed. And so it would come that much faster.
Earl, one of our thoughts that we had was, if we decide that it's not cost-effective or educationally effective to renovate Elm Street, then we want to balance the 3 middle schools at about 800 students.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that may involve construction or not at both of the other schools. We already have portables at Pennachuck Middle School. Those were going to disappear 20 years ago. So,
much like Elm.
And I'm finding a lot of the people don't have a complete understanding of the project if we decide to go a new school. And you also know that we already own the land down south of Nashua if we go that way. The other thing is that when we look at the school, if we're talking renovation of Elm Street versus a new school, is either one or both of the projects going to meet the educational standards of today's middle school?
No, sir. When you're done at Elm Street, there's a whole state standards for education. Unfortunately, the room sizes back in 1930s, when this was a WPA project, which I say the city, being a taxpayer, it's amazing. The city got its money's worth out of that building. That cost $600,000 to build back in the 30s. So they've got their use out of that building. But when you're done, back on the standards, when you're done, none of the classrooms meet the state standards in terms of square footage per student, square footage per pupil. And to start taking down interior walls and trying to reconfigure, it's going to be more costly than you see what I projected back in 2017. So no, you're correct, Mr. Dodd. The school will not meet state standards even when you finish it. I mean, it's a beautiful school. I mean, it's got a lot of character, the tile on the walls and what have you, but there's so many code issues today, and based on what you're doing, you got to bring that up to code, not only from an ADA standpoint, which it doesn't meet, but you got energy codes you got to consider, and how you're going to deal with that on a multi-width wall like the exterior wall is. There's a lot of challenges to try to get this to meet code in and of itself. But when you're done, you have a school that's built starting in the 30s that's still not going to meet the educational standards in the 21st century.
So does that hard construction cost include those bringing everything up to standard?
We were insulating the exterior wall, we were roofing it, we're taking care of all of the egress code issues and stairways and what have you. The only thing that's not included in that $48 million that we talked about, and I believe I put a number to potentially what the floor issue would be, and that'd be at least another $1 million, is correcting the floor. The floor is a gyp plank. They don't do it anymore, but it's been compromised so much that I think Mr. Smith and company have been repairing those floors over the years. So that whole structural element has to be looked at and evaluated by a structural engineer. That's not included in that number. The other thing that's not included, for those on the board, they know that like out of Mount Pleasant, you did your variable refrigeration systems for air conditioning. There was talk about what it would cost to air condition that same type of, take that same type of approach to air condition the old part of the school. That's not in there. So again, this was more of what we've been doing to the other schools, upgrading the mechanicals, upgrading the electricals. We would handle all of the energy code issues and code issues. Those have been addressed based on that number.
So when you do the analysis, you're going to give us the pros and cons of both approaches so that we can look at, okay.
But like I said, you got to get into that building more than I did. It's very difficult to see some of the areas because you got acoustical ceilings, but you got plaster ceilings above them, and you can't even see the structure that's above that. So you got to do a little destructive, investigation work in order to truly understand what you're dealing with. We didn't go that far based on that number, but that's what we'd have to do. We're saying we got to put a SWAT team together and get in and do that analysis so you'd have that information you need to make an informed decision. Sean?
I was just going to add to the educational specifications. We had a study done by Harriman.
Correct.
Just on meeting the state code for spaces. Doesn't have anything to do with any of this other stuff that Carl's talking about it. And the school had an awful lot of spaces. I still have the study, so if people want to see that, just let me know or email me and I can send it to you. But that's not included up there either, is it? No. So this number is easily north of 60 million when it's all said and done.
Very easily. There's a lot of issues that like I said, based on not being able to do destructive testing, we went in, did a good assessment on what we saw, what we talked about. They put a program together showing where the additions would go for additional classroom space to get rid of those portables. The other issue you have with this school, when you're done, this is the only school in the city that the kids have to get on a bus after school and go to an athletic field. There's no fields, there's no playground, there's nothing there. And parking in and of itself is a challenge. So when you're done, and as much as I'd love to see, I'm all for renovating existing old buildings, because once they're gone, they're gone. Or if you raise them, they're gone forever. Even spending that kind of money, you will not meet the educational guidelines, and you still get a school that will serve the city, but it shouldn't serve it like it can in the 21st century.
I've also done a lot of analysis online about new middle school construction, and they're doing things in middle schools now across the country that you'd never be able to do in Elm Street. And I'm assuming that we will look at that going forward if we build a new school.
Absolutely.
And it helps the transition from elementary school to high school, because that's one of our biggest problems that everybody on the Board of Ed knows, the middle school issues. So
there's a lot of collaborative learning today.
Right.
There's a lot of congregation space. It's not just classrooms anymore, not like when I went to school. I mean, schools today, education's being taught much different. And the other problem you have is also everything for special needs and the amount of space that they need today in order to teach those students. I mean, I give the city credit. They've crammed in every nook, cranny, closet that they can use. There's just no more room in that school.
Heather?
Thank you. A minute ago, you were talking about how on all the other schools you've upgraded the mechanical to a certain point. But I was noticing in your information that you gave us some of the interesting stuff that you guys did at Phillips Exeter, with like one of them has solar like crazy, one of them has a geothermal. How did that come about? Because I don't think we've talked about any of that stuff here, but it just caught my interest.
Can we?
We're going to get to it.
Okay, never mind.
Actually, let's just go there.
Yeah, there you go.
Pat, do you want to talk? Yeah.
So up there is some examples of projects that we've completed that have had higher sustainability goals with them. The upper left picture is Falmouth Elementary School. That's a great-looking elementary school, I think. Smutty Nose Brewery is the upper right. Lower left is at St. Paul's School, and the lower right is Laconia Middle School. So they've all had different components to them. Just as you mentioned, Phillips Exeter is actually on the next slide with a large solar array on it, but we've had several different things at some of these other schools. So the Laconia Middle School had the CHIPS, the high performance program, and they utilized some other water harvesting. You were actually part of that. You can probably speak to that a little, give some examples of what was.
One of the big challenges at the Laconia Middle School was that there was a existing facility. We built a brand new school in virtually the same footprint as the existing school. So again, that's another example of one of our projects where we utilized.
Yeah, and end up with the construction waste, having that all get recycled. One of the neat things about Smutty Nose was some of the timber that was cut, actually some of that wood was reused in the project. So those different projects had different facets. You mentioned Phillips Exeter though, and that has one of the largest solar arrays of a school in the state. And we have a partnership with Revision Energy and have worked with them on several projects, and the solar power purchase agreements that schools have, depending on how they finance it and how that goes along and whether they buy out the solar array at the end of it. So we try to make sure that during the design phase we are helping ask those questions and meet those needs and understand what the district would want and try to get as much as we can. But we certainly have experience using and doing different things on all different projects.
At a minimum, we would take you through the LEED checklist. May not make it a LEED project, but there's nothing wrong with going through the checklist and see what you could pull off that has, first start with no cost impact. The construction industry, I always say, as archaic as it is, has made major strides over the years. You got all low VOCs, which has become the norm now. So you don't have to worry about off-gassing when you're done a building. Recycling, we've made, and that, was it you, that 90?
Well, that's what I was trying to get to. In Laconia, where we demoed the existing building, we hit 98% recycle on all the debris. On all the debris. So what we did in that case, again, that was a CHIPS program, and so we fortunately had the space to bring in about a half a dozen different containers so that we were able to segregate everything. So we had containers for wood, for glass, for metal, and we're able to, and those didn't go to the landfill. That was just so that we could contain it all, and that all got recycled. So that was one of the great accomplishments at that particular school.
And Heather, I think, and you referenced geothermal, which we've done a number of geothermal fields for our clients. I think that's another viable option to consider, depending on the water tables or what have you, down at wherever it might be. And certainly on the solar side, we certainly love to figure out what kind of design might work, whether it be at Elm Street or at a new school. And Revision's been great to work with, so I think they'd be more than happy to help out.
It's interesting, what, 5-7 years ago? How long has it been?
I was just going to interject. So it was the Fairgrounds Elementary project.
We went through this study.
Geothermal.
Right.
We went up to New Brunswick High School, I think, because they had a new geothermal system. So it's something that's on our conscience. Solar, we're always looking at, and certainly that's
a great option these days.
It's a good project for this one.
Based on what I know about the history of Elm Street, putting a solar array on the roof may not be a sound idea.
It's possible.
Well, just the structural, you have to beef it up.
I mean, you may not make it for you're not going to have something like this, obviously, but what we're seeing in a lot of schools is you will have a series of voltaic panels as an educational piece for the students to learn and understand what it's all about. Not so much to reduce your energy consumption, but from an educational standpoint, we've done that in numerous places where you put in a small few sets of panels so that the kids can actually see what's going on.
And one thing I mentioned to the other people is, one thing I'd be interested in is a life cycle cost analysis of, all right, I renovate Elm Street, and what's it going to cost me for the next 10, 15 years? Or I build a new school, what's that going to cost me per year for the next 10 to 15 years? Because it could easily offset, even if the new school was a little more expensive, the long-term savings could be huge.
Yep. Typically, that's done by a mechanical engineer. Once the drawings are, everything's defined, then they can put all that information in the computer and they can spit out a report that'll tell you both of those.
So I'm conscious of time, even though I wasted a lot of your time by sitting outside for a little bit.
Give you an allowance there.
Okay. We won't necessarily bore you with the process that we go through in terms of procurement and subcontracting. Know that it's within the city and the school district's requirements, that it's an open process, that it's a merit shop process. And I think truly it's one of our greatest, one of the greatest benefits we bring to you is the leverage that we have in the market and the process that we use. People know, subcontractors like to work for us. They know they're going to get paid. They know when we call them and say, get 10 electricians over here, that we're going to be ready for them. They're going to go in, they're going to get their work done. They're not going to show up and we're not ready for them. So our relationship with subcontractors, and it's heavily in the procurement process is a big part of that. We feel like we are experts in the market, that's for sure. So again, we'll finish up real quick by confirming that we have a lot of information, a lot of experience, and a lot of willpower to build new schools. Wyndham School, the Krista McAuliffe School, we built three new elementary schools in 18 months in Concord simultaneously. Westbrook Middle School, which is a great school, and as we're going through this process, we may want to go visit. Certainly, we know that Oyster River just recently went up there, and we're not working with Oyster River, and it's with a different architect than did Westbrook, but they use that as an example of what middle schools are looking like these days. And in terms of occupied schools, it's a real art to get yourself through a construction process where you have the educational process going all day, into the night, during the summer. This is Salem High School, as it was a few months ago, well, probably 10 months ago.
That's it today.
We just had the grand opening this past weekend. It all worked well. To your point about assessing the pros and the cons, we went through the process with Salem, and that was a 4.5-year renovation and addition project. They felt that they had the bones that were worthy to add on and renovate. You do hamper the educational process when you build a new school. The educational process at Elm Street would not change. It would be business as usual until the new school was done. But we've certainly done plenty of schools. This is Laconia Middle School, which Mike Halliday was responsible for. The existing school kind of is on the right side of the school. We built the new part, the new school, and then we took other pieces down as we moved into the new part of the building. And then certainly Sunset Heights, which we've talked about a bit. There was a lot of work done in the summers. We certainly spend a lot of time thinking about the summers and how to get the most work done as possible while the kids are away. But these are the things that are important to us, and I know Mike has a couple things to add here.
Well, again, we've worked at these existing projects, and the main focus for us is to not impact the day-to-day operations, and that's one of the things that we certainly focus on. Safety is important, obviously. My primary goal is to make sure that the safety is we're making sure that the students, the staff, and the public are safe. I am also responsible for the safety of the workers, but I work very closely with the principals at every school. We work collaboratively, making sure that we're not impacting the day-to-day operations. we come up with some unique ways to address unique issues, and I'm going to use Sunset Heights and Broad Street as examples. We had some very challenging issues doing the mechanical renovations, and we had old steam lines that ran under all the classrooms. So, how do you do that without impacting the day-to-day operations? Well, we actually collaborated with the fire department, and because this is all confined space, which is something that we worked with the fire department to create a plan that was accepted so that we could access those areas very safely without impacting the day-to-day operations. And then, we take, again, our approach with egress, because we're moving around from, once we finish a phase, we go on to the next phase. So we have to change our logistics plans constantly. We give, like Kyle pointed out originally, we make these logistics plans at the beginning showing our phasing, but then it's a moving object. And so, again, we're collaboratively with the principal mostly, certainly with the architects and engineers to make sure that we're, following all the protocols. And that's certainly one of the things that we spend a lot of time on. We have another thing that we do is I develop a site-specific safety plan so that every worker that comes onto the site is responsible for understanding what the rules are, so that we're not impacting buses, parent drop-off, and every worker that comes onto the site reads that, understands the rules, so that we are, again, making sure that everybody's safe. We use hard hat stickers and ID badges, but we make sure that the teachers and the staff know who's supposed to be there, so that there's no anxiety from the teacher's perspective. They're comfortable with us working there. They know that when they see the workers with the hard hats and their stickers on there, that they've gone through that safety protocol, so that, again, that those things are ironed out ahead of time. And so those are, again, some of the things that we do to ensure the safety working around occupied schools. Are there any questions on that? Yep. Sean?
Maybe just a general question for you. I've asked the other companies this as well. So I think it's called an EMR, your safety number 0. Do you know what that is off the top of your head?
87.
87?
0.87.
Okay. And I know Carl for sure, and I'm pretty sure some of you were refugees from Gilbane. Well, refugee is the right word for it, but
Thanks, John.
they were here for this school, and so you've worked with OSIP programs. That's what I'm trying to get to. So owner-controlled insurance programs. So you have a lot of experience with that.
Kathy and I were in South.
Yep.
I know. I remember.
So.
If there are any questions, please ask.
Any other questions from the board?
Just a minute to close, perhaps?
Absolutely.
We've kind of gone over a lot of the reasons why we think we're the best solution for the school district, whether it be occupied schools, our experience together, our commitment to sustainability, our market, the leverage in the market, I think, is critical. We get the best pricing from the subcontractors so we can drive prices down. We have a culture that matches Nashua well. We work hard. We believe in teamwork. We bring integrity to the process. And two intangibles that aren't up there that I just wanted to stress with you are one, we are a New Hampshire-based company. And if you talk to the economists around here, they'll tell you that every dollar that stays in New Hampshire turns into $3 to the local economy. You're talking about 4 people that live in New Hampshire. A few of us even closer than we're closer to my house than the office right now. But when you pay Harvey every month, that money comes to Bedford, gets distributed in New Hampshire, and stays in New Hampshire. We go to the same grocery stores, we bank at the same banks, we go to the same pharmacies, and that we believe that we contribute to the economy, the growing economy in New Hampshire, and we think that's important. We are New Hampshire. And that leads me to my final comment, and that is how personal this is for us. So my mother taught at Nashua High back in the 1960s. I went to Elm Street Junior High, not the middle school. I love that school. I really do. And I've had discussions with your janitorial and maintenance staff over there about how impressed I am with how well it's been kept up over the years. And I know you're kind of at a crosshairs now about what to do. What's the next step? And we're here tonight to tell you that we're committed to helping you figure that out. We're going to be with you the entire way, looking at every detail, pricing those details out so that you can make educated decisions on what is right for the city and right for the school, the kids in Nashua. We're going to look at schedule, we're going to look at phasing, and we're going to line all those things up with you and working hand in hand to make sure that you're coming up with an educated decision with all the factual elements behind it, supporting your decision as you move forward and bring this to the rest of the city as to what you feel the best option is. So we're here for you. It means something to us. And we really hope that you'll consider Harvey for this project.
Thank you very much. Just as an antecedent, my grandfather was the president of the Board of Education when Elm Street was built.
Oh, wow.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
My aunt was the head of the English department, and my mother taught at the high school, and I went there at Nashua High. So, but the one thing I'm focusing on is what's best for the students going forward.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, one final point I'd like to make too is that, this is also personal for me. I go back, my first project here in Nashua for the school district was Dr. Chris some 20 years ago. And then I've also, again, been involved with Ledge Street and Broad Street and certainly Sunset Heights. And so one of the things that like I say, it's personal for me, but there's being involved with Nashua for as many years as I've been involved, and knowing Sean and Gary the way I do, there's very little learning curve for me on this. I understand what the process is. I understand what we're trying to accomplish as a team, and I think that is another thing that we bring to the table.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a non-public session now and try to select who we'll be using. And hopefully we'll make that decision this evening, and hopefully tomorrow Sean and I will let all three companies know what the decision was.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.